All right, so now I'm going to start sharing my screen. Oops. That. There we go. All right. All right, are you guys all able to see the screen? Or the PowerPoint should say welcome.
Yes, it showed up on mine, so.
Okay, perfect. All right, so this first little presentation that we have is just a little bit of background about CHS and what we're all about. So there is no test, so this one you can kind of just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So again, everyone, welcome to CHS. We are so excited to have you. And if you've never done this type of work before, this training is, we kind of go over a lot of the kind of the basics of the job, so kind of the gist of it. So each location is extremely, it's all different. But our mission is to provide and promote the highest quality of care to individuals, families, and the community. CHS strives to provide the personalized care in a culturally sensitive family atmosphere, helping people to achieve life goals by responding to various needs with creative solutions, utilizations of caring and skilled staff, and coordination of community service. We were founded in 1997, and we now proudly serve hundreds of individuals in 10 counties across mid-Michigan. We primarily contract with CMH agencies to provide one-on-one services to individuals with disabilities. CHS employees specialize in coaching our consumers' various life skills to help them gain or maintain their independence. And these services are provided both in our consumers' private homes and out in the community. So if you haven't already, make sure to check us out on Facebook. We do lots of awesome posts. We do some fun posts too. But that's where you can kind of get some updates on what's going on. Right now, if you haven't heard, we're doing some summer picnics. So we've done a lot of the areas already. I think we have 2 more left, but we post all the updates on there. We also do some consumer highlights and employee of the month spotlights. So just make sure you go on there and check it out. I love seeing pictures of all the staff and all the consumers and what you guys are all doing out there. So training and documentation. So we are contracted through community mental health and other various agencies to provide services to our consumers. And this requires us to have specific training and documentation both at hire and annually. So that's another reason why you guys are here. So we are required to provide this training. And so at the end of your training today, make sure that you put all of your completed tests in the envelope that was given to you and put it directly in the mail so that way you don't forget. Because if you don't do it today or, first thing tomorrow morning, I can guarantee you probably it's going to slip your mind. You're going to forget all about it. So just make sure that you do it as soon as possible. We are also required to keep copies of your driver's license and auto insurance at all times. So if you know that your driver's license or car insurance is going to expire, we are going to need new copies. So I will be reaching out to you to get that copy. So once you get it, just send it right in. And any late or expired training and documentation puts CHS at risk of losing our contracts. Employee benefits. We offer paid time off and holiday pay. We also have a 401k, and CHS matches 4% of that. And this is available to those who work at least 1,000 hours in their first year, and enrollment is in June and December. Our insurance coverage, and this is available to all full-time staff. So if you work 30 or more hours per week, you are considered full-time. And that includes medical, dental, and vision. We also offer life insurance and accidental death and dismemberment coverage. And there's a $10,000 policy that is provided by CHS at no cost to you. And then if you want to pick up an additional package for voluntary life, AD&D insurance is available to you at a discounted group rate. Referral program. So if you guys know anybody that are looking for a job, family, friend, anybody, and you refer them, if they stay with us for 90 days, you will receive a $100 bonus. So send in those referrals. Anniversary bonuses. For full-time employees, you will get $100 per year with $1,000 max. Part-time employees will get $50 per year with a $500 max, and then part-time respite and on-call staff will get $25 per year with a $250 max. Paid time off, or PTO. So this is available to all staff, so full-time, part-time, and on-call. And you will earn hours every pay period to be used towards vacation or personal and family health needs. So the longer you've been with us, the faster that they go up. Employees have a minimum of 8 hours of PTO before PTO pay is awarded, and employees earn PTO hours will max out at 120 hours. So if you are somebody that doesn't take vacations, or if you're lucky enough to never get sick, so you build up all those hours, once you get to 120 hours, you will not earn any more. So you can cash out on those, or maybe just take the vacation. Management does reserve the right to deny vacation requests based on scheduling needs. It's an authorized based on a first come, first served basis. Vacations must be requested as soon as possible, but at least 30 days in advance. Most of us, if we are taking a vacation, we plan it months ahead of time. So if you know you are taking a vacation, make sure you put that request in, so that way we know about it. We can, have enough time to find coverage and all of that. And vacations cannot be approved for more than 2 weeks at a time. So if you're taking a longer vacation, just know that you can't take off more than 2 weeks at one time. Unused earned PTO will be paid to you only if you give and fulfill a 2 weeks notice of resignation. So, if you are deciding that you are going to be leaving CHS, make sure that you put that 2 weeks in, because if you do not and you just quit without notice, then you will not be given that PTO. Holiday pay. Holiday pay, again, is available to all staff, so all full-time, part-time, and on-call staff. You will receive 1 1/2 times the base rate for the hours worked, and we observe the holiday from 12 a.m. to 12 a.m., so that full 24 hours. And we observe New Year's Day, Easter, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. So if you work that holiday, you will get time and a half. Payroll. So you are paid bi-weekly. So this is directly deposited into the account of your choice. So either direct deposit, so into your bank account, or if you chose to get a pay card, it's every other Thursday morning. So our next payday will be next week. If CHS does not receive a staff's payroll election by Tuesday at 2 p.m. of their first payroll week, they will be mailed a paper check to their address on file. So if you were a little late getting your payroll form to us, then we will mail out that check. Absenteeism and tardiness. All employees are expected to report to work as scheduled unless approved by their supervisor. Excused absences are those which were reported to the supervisor and approved at least 4 hours in advance. Tardiness or early departure from work without prior approval will be treated as an unexcused absence. Employees are required to directly contact their supervisor, again, at least 4 hours in advance of their scheduled shift. And you must speak directly to your supervisor, so sending a text or leaving a voicemail is not acceptable. And reporting your absence or tardy only to your consumer or guardian is not acceptable either. So if you know that you're not feeling well, make sure that you're calling in as soon as possible to cancel the shift. Obviously, we do understand that sometimes emergencies happen, but make sure that you're trying to do it at least 4 hours in advance. Just remember that your consumer is expecting you to show up. They're relying on you. So, we do expect you to be dependable. So if you are unable to get a hold of your supervisor, again, this is a little bit, this is kind of the chain of command, and each location is a little bit different. So not all homes will be like this. Not everybody's going to have a lead staff. But if you are at a 24-hour home, or if you do have a lead staff, you're going to contact your lead staff or the assistant lead staff. If you can't get a hold of them, you will get a hold of the care coordinator. And if you can't get a hold of your care coordinator, you will get a hold of the director of care, and that is Hannah Starks. Any excessive tardiness or absenteeism may result in termination. So if you are late more than 3 times per year, or if you are absent more than 1 day per month. Any employee who is absent 3 consecutive days, scheduled work days, without reporting their absences to their supervisor will be considered a voluntary quit and will be separated. So if you need to trade a shift, both employees must agree on the trade and complete a shift trade confirmation form. The lead staff and care coordinator must approve the shift in advance, which is at least 2 weeks, and initial the change on the schedule. The shift trade must not put either staff into overtime, and then once this is approved, the employee will be responsible to work the new shift that they have committed to. So once it's been approved and you agree to it, that is your scheduled shift, so you are expected to be there on that day. Our emergency procedures, we have a CHS after hours emergency line. Most of you during orientation probably put this number in your cell phone. So this would be after hours would be any holidays, any weekends, or any weekday emergencies that happen from 5 p.m. until 8 a.m. the following business day. If there is a life-threatening emergency situation, you're going to call 911 first. And then in that situation, CHS, the agency CHS is contracted through, and the family or guardian need to be notified as well. But those phone calls should take place after the situation's under control and everyone is safe. Our dress code, CHS employees are expected to maintain high standards of neatness, cleanliness, and personal hygiene. Employees need to arrive for work in neat, clean, and appropriate clothing for the occasion. No exposed necklaces, dangling earrings, nose rings, because it's dangerous. You don't want to get anything, caught or tangled up. Staff should always remember that we act as role models for our consumers and should avoid the following. So wearing anything that could be considered offensive, anything that's revealing or inappropriate clothing, or pajamas. So we do have some fun spirit weeks. We hopefully we'll be having one coming up soon. So each day we do something a little bit fun. And so occasionally we do have pajama day. So you are welcome to participate in that, but just make sure that you are wearing appropriate clothing. Just remember that you are a direct support professional. So, you don't have to wear super professional clothes. We want you to be comfy at work too, but just make it appropriate. Maintaining boundaries. These next couple slides are really important because you will be working closely with your individuals. So you are going to be building some hopefully pretty awesome relationships, but making sure that you are maintaining all of those boundaries. So just remember that your role is a professional one. So it's okay to build those relationships, and connect with your consumer, but you want to make it professional. So you never want to share any staffing concerns or problems with the consumers or their family or guardians. All the concerns or questions should be brought to CHS's attention only. So that would be your supervisor. Never invite visitors to your consumer's home or on their outings. Never bring consumers back to your personal residence. Do not share in-depth personal information with consumers or their families or guardians. The consumers' families and their guardians, they have a lot going on in their own life that they don't need to worry about what's going on in your life too. Always refer back to the person-centered plan, and do not participate in outings or family events outside of work hours. You never want to speak about other families with which you work, even if you're not referring to them by name. Confidentiality is a huge thing. Remember, you don't want people talking about your personal life to others, especially behind your back. So, just always keep that in mind. Always remain neutral and positive, excuse me, in disagreements between your consumer and their family members. Do not buy gifts or spend money on consumers or family members. And do not accept gifts or money from the consumers or their family members. Do not bring any personal items into your consumer's residence. CHS is not reliable, or CHS or your consumer or guardian are not liable for lost, stolen, or damaged goods. So, don't bring anything to work that you are worried about. So if you're worried about getting stolen or broke, especially like a laptop, because if it does break at work, we are not liable to pay for it. And avoid being physically affectionate with consumers in any inappropriate ways. Confidentiality. This is an ethical concept that prohibits CHS or its employees from releasing information about the individuals we provide services to. In accepting employment with CHS, employees are placed in a position of trust regarding the individuals we serve. Every employee must be constantly aware of the confidential nature of all information regarding the clients. And staff are not to release any information regarding the consumer to anyone without prior consent from the guardian. Social media, this is a pretty big one. All of us, or I shouldn't say all of us, but most of us have some kind of social media account, whether it be Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Snapchat, any type of social media. As a CHS employee, you are expected to be respectful of CHS, its programs, the families and consumers, and its employees in all communications, and agree to the following. Maintain confidentiality and refrain from posting confidential information about CHS, fellow employees, and our consumers past and present. Do not engage in harassment and or intimidation or post comments that are derogatory in any regard. Do not post photographs that compromise anyone's privacy or that are used to demean, humiliate, or otherwise embarrass anyone. And never engage in any form of social media with the consumers we serve or their families. So again, especially with engaging in social media with the consumer or their family, that's part of maintaining that boundary. So if you do get a friend request from them, just politely decline, because we're trying to maintain those boundaries. Phone usage. So obviously you guys all need your phone to clock in and out for work, to type your notes out, all of that. So you are only to use your phone for personal business purposes only. No personal calls or texts are to be received or made during working hours. So just remember, you're at work and your full attention should be on your consumer. So if you need to use your phone for work, that's okay, because you're using that for business purposes. But that text or phone call can wait till later. Just wait till after work to respond to that. Again, this includes using the home and the community and driving with consumers present. So especially don't be using your phone while driving. Smoking and tobacco products. So if you are a smoker or a vapor, just make sure that you are to never do that in front of your consumer. Employees are required to follow the smoking protocols for the home that they work in. If you don't know where those are, just make sure you're asking your care coordinator or lead staff. And then you are to use the smoking area, or just remember that you're responsible for your consumers at all times. Sleeping on duty, this is strictly prohibited, and it will result in a 3-day unpaid suspension for the first offense, and the second offense will result in termination. Again, remember that you are hired to provide the care for the consumers, so you cannot sleep. I remember many moons ago when I first started working in this field, I was told a story about I worked in AFC home, so we had 2 staff on it the whole time. The 2 midnighters decided to take a little nap, and the case manager decided to do a stop in early in the morning, found the 2 staff sleeping, and one of the consumers was in the kitchen on the floor eating everything out of the fridge. The problem is with this particular consumer, he had pica. So if you're not familiar with that, he puts anything. He liked to put anything in his mouth. So he would eat, the cardboard, things like that. So he was a huge choking risk. So luckily the situation, he just got some really good food and he ate a whole gallon of ice cream. So he was very happy about that. But that situation could have been very bad. What if the 2 staff were sleeping and he would have choked? So sleeping on duty is definitely strictly prohibited, because you are getting paid to provide care for the consumer. So you are not providing that care or that supervision if you are sleeping. So that is why this is so harsh. There's no tolerance on that. So just make sure you are not sleeping. You are required to be awake and alert at all times, and supervisors must be notified of all incidents involving an employee sleeping immediately. So, if you know someone was sleeping and you saw it, make sure you report that. Medication administration. So we will have a whole presentation talking about meds and how to administer them and all of that, but this is just kind of the gist of it. Medication errors are preventable events caused by inappropriate use of medications. Med errors can be harmful to the individual and potentially life-threatening. All medication errors will result in written disciplinary action and a required training session with your supervisor. Do not set up any medications ahead of time. Set up immediately before you are ready to administer. Never give one consumer's medications to another consumer. Give medications prescribed and on time. Administer only medications that you are prepared personally. And while preparing or administering medications, concentrate on this alone. So avoid all the interruptions or disruptions and make sure that you're always being attentive. And then document medications immediately after you pass them. Zero tolerance policy. No employee shall possess, consume, or carry with them any of the following of the client's property that CHS provides services for or any vehicle used for work. So you cannot have any alcoholic beverages of any kind. No illegal drugs and controlled substances. And then prescription medications that otherwise require a prescription by a licensed healthcare professional if such a prescription has not been written or ordered. And any employee will be required to submit to a substance screen if suspected of being under the influence of drugs or alcohol while on duty. Electronic visit verification, or EVV. So this is our WellSky mobile app. So this is the app that you all use to clock in and out for your shifts and to document all of your notes. We have this because it is a federal mandate to ensure Medicaid funds are being properly used and to eliminate Medicaid fraud. So that is how we are reimbursed for your shifts, and how you get paid is from Medicaid funds. So that's how they're using this to make sure that, you know, the staff are where they say they are. So that way, you know, to make sure that you're getting paid properly and that that consumer was properly being taken care of. Employees must be within 75 yards of their consumer's home or frequent alternate address to clock in and out. So if you are someone that, you know, has to go pick up a consumer outside the location or meet up with them, make sure that you're messaging Luke so that way we can put it in the system. And all employees are expected to regularly clock in and out at the correct times and submit all notes and mileage within the app to remain compliant. So email the scheduling coordinator for any missed information within 24 hours. And I'm sure some of you probably have already talked with Luke. Luke is our scheduling coordinator. He gets all the missing late notifications and any missed shifts. He gets alerted for it. So he will reach out to you if he sees something odd. But for some reason, if you know for sure that you missed a clock in or did something incorrectly, make sure you contact him as soon as possible. It is the staff's responsibility to ensure that all shifts are completed correctly, and any schedule changes to the regular rotation need to be communicated with the care coordinator as soon as possible, but no later than 4 hours in advance. All right, documentation guidelines. You always want to include the full name of the consumer on every document, and you want to complete every entry on the documentation. You're going to sign the bottom of every entry and put, if you do make an error, you're going to put a single line through any errors and write error and initial your corrections. You never want to use whiteout and never blacken out mistakes. So, you know, if you do have to handwrite some type of document, it's okay if you make an error, you know, mistakes happen. Just make sure you just put that single line through it, initial it, and write error. And that's because documentation, this can be used, you know, for other things. So if you're blacking it out or whiting it out, it looks like you're trying to hide something. So clearly identify all persons included in documentation. So that could be staff, family members, friends, and other consumers. You don't ever want to give personal opinions. You only want to record the facts of the situation, and you want to be as specific as possible. So again, you don't ever want to record your opinion. You want to record that fact. So kind of an example of that would be, let's say someone's having cold-like symptoms. So typically when you're having cold-like symptoms, you have a runny nose, maybe a cough, maybe flushed in the face. So you don't want to say Sue has a cold, because you're giving your opinion. Unless she was, you know, diagnosed by the doctor that said she had the cold, then you can put that in there because that's a fact because she was diagnosed. But if that's what you think she has, you could say that she's having cold-like symptoms and describe what those symptoms are. She's flushed, runny nose, that type of thing. So never record your opinion. You only want to record the facts, so anything that you are physically seeing. All required documentation should be completed at the end of your shift. CLS progress notes. So CLS, this stands for Community Living Support. CLS goal is this is used to increase or maintain a consumer's personal self-sufficiency, independence, participation, and productivity. So the CLS goals, this is why if you are providing CLS services, this is why you're in the consumer's home to help them work on those goals and to help them maintain that independence. A CLS note describes how the staff member helped the person work toward their goal and explain how the person responded to that assistance. So when you're documenting in your CLS notes, you're documenting on how you help that individual work on those goals and what their response to that was. Did they achieve that goal? Did they refuse to work on that goal? And describe how you worked on that. And here in a little bit, we'll go through an example of a proper CLS note. Excuse me. All listed activities should be related back to your consumer-specific PCP goals and objectives. Always document any education, encouragement, and all refusals. So it's okay if your consumer, refused to do something. You just want to document and how you encourage them to do it, and then document that they refused. Remember, CLS is doing with rather than doing for. So especially in some of our bigger cases, so like the 24-hour cases and maybe even in some of the other homes, you might be doing a little bit more than just working on the CLS goals, but you don't want to document that task unless the consumer is with you. So for example, if you vacuumed the living room and the consumer was not part of that, at all, you didn't ask them to join in, you're not working on their goal for that, you're not going to document that you vacuumed the living room. It's awesome that you did, and there's other areas or other places where you can document that, but just you're not going to document that in the CLS notes. All right, incident reports. So you would fill this form out anytime something out of the ordinary happens, and you want to make sure that you're filling the entire form out completely. You don't want to leave any blank entries. You can write NA, if there's nothing to write there. And then you want to be as specific as possible with all of the details. And there's not a whole lot of room to write on here. So if there is an incident that, is pretty lengthy, again, you want to be as specific as possible. So that might require some more room so you can use the second piece of paper. So when filling out this form, you want to be whoever, you have to remember that you are documenting on this, and the people that are reading it were not there to witness that incident. So that's why you want to be very specific. So, if a staff was working with Sue and she fell down, that staff is going to write down exactly, what they were doing. So what was she doing before it happened? How did she, hurt herself? And what did you do after to help that situation? So if I'm reading that, I should be reading it like painting a picture in my head of everything that happened. I should not have any questions about that incident. And then you're going to contact the lead staff or care coordinator for assistance with action to prevent that reoccurrence. So sometimes it is hard to think of how to prevent that incident from happening. So, you can't think of how to prevent it. Just make sure you get a hold of either a care coordinator or your lead staff. We're always here to help you. And then you're going to complete and fax to CMH and CHS as soon as possible, but no later than 24 hours. So if this happened on your shift, just make sure you're getting it over to us and to CMH by the end of your shift, because you don't want to forget to hand that over. Employee injury reports. So this is for staff. So if you were to hurt yourself at work, you want to report every injury every time. And you want to be, again, you want to be as specific as possible on this. So you want to explain where you were, what you were doing, and what caused that injury. And then you want to, again, list all injuries, and you want to be as specific as possible as to where the injuries were on your body. And then if you are receiving medical attention, did you go after your shift, or did you have to leave your shift and go to the doctor or hospital, whatever it may need? And then will you be missing any additional shifts? And then again, you want to get this to us as soon as possible, but no later than 24 hours. So, again, if you hurt yourself at work, just make sure that you're completing this form, as soon as you can and getting it over to us as quickly as you can. All right, so these last couple slideshows. We do have two offices here. We have our main office is here in Mount Pleasant, and then we have, for the Midland care coordinators, we have a little office and Midland as well. So for billing and payroll, so if you ever have any questions over your time card, just payroll questions in general, or mileage reimbursement, if you have questions, maybe that's going to get added or how, anything like that, you're going to contact Mark or Casey. They can help you out with that. The human resource department, so that's if you have any training questions, anything about policies, so health insurance, life insurance, you're going to contact Erin. She's the HR director, and then, or myself, especially if you have any questions about training or open positions, anything like that, you can get a hold of me. So our care coordinators, so these are your, your supervisors of the different counties. That would be Tiffany. She is a supervisor over Ionia and Montcalm. Melissa is a supervisor for Montcalm, Gratiot, and Newaygo. Tara, if you are a respite staff, Tara is more than likely your supervisor for that. Santa and Marla are the Midland County supervisors, and then Samantha, she supervises Claire, Isabella, Macasta, and Escola counties. Hannah, she is the director of care, so she supervises all the coordinators and helps them out and leads them into direction. She wears many hats, so she's always busy doing different things. Luke, he is our scheduling coordinator, so any scheduling issues that you may have, again, if you forgot to clock in or out, you needed to cancel a shift, anything that has to do with your schedule, once it's approved, then you would message Luke and he can get that updated in the system for you. And then Kent, he is our executive director. All right, does anybody have any questions over kind of the basics of CHS?
Nope.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to be getting on our first test, and that is the new hire training competency test. So these next, I think it's 4 or 5 PowerPoints. It's going to cover a little bit of this information, so that'll be for this whole test, the next 5 PowerPoints. Again, we'll be doing this test together, so once we come up with the answer, I will let you know. Most of the answers are directly right on the PowerPoint. Oops. Grabbing mine so I can have it in front of me. So first, we are going to be covering limited English proficiency, HIPAA, and cultural competence. All right, so limited English proficiency, LEP. So why do we need to know about it? According to the Board Association, all community mental health staff are required to know about accommodating persons with limited English proficiency, or LEP. LEP is defined as an individual's inability to speak, read, write, or understand English at a level that permits effective interaction with healthcare providers. We need to make sure that staff recognizes the language limitations some consumers may have, and we must be willing and prepared to help those where language is a barrier obtain needed treatment and support. We can't say we don't have an ethnic population in our area. That would be indirect discrimination. And this involves family, friends, and professionals as desired by the recipient. The legal basis. So LEP compliance is a legal obligation. However, there is no single LEP law. It's a combination of existing laws, sets of regulations, and court decisions. Plus, English is not the official language of the United States. It is common, but not the legal standard. So I pretty much spent almost my whole life thinking that English was the official language because, in our school systems and everything, that is primarily what we teach kids is English. But it really makes sense because the U.S. is so diverse and many people speak many different languages. So that's why English is not the official language. So who is covered under LEP? All persons, including illegal immigrants. So what are our obligations as a provider? We are required to examine our practices to assure that there are no unintended barriers to LEP persons. And the following is available upon request to the appropriate care coordinator. Language assistance to a consumer at the level necessary at no cost to the individual. interpreters who are competent in mental health terminology and committed to confidentiality requirements. Oral interpretation is available for any language, and written information is available in prevalent languages and how to access those services. And written materials are available in alternate formats and in an appropriate manner that takes into consideration the special needs of those who are visually limited or have limited reading proficiency as required by the ADA. Copies of the PIHP develop written information in prevalent non-English languages in its particular service area, and easily understood languages and format is available in alternate formats and in an appropriate manner that takes into consideration the special needs of those who are visually limited or have limited reading proficiency. We will not allow minors, other consumers, or a consumer's family member or friends to act as interpreters, and this is only acceptable in emergency situations. If the consumer chooses a family member or a friend after they have been informed of their right to free language assistance, it must be documented with the consumer's sign off. So basically, it's a very kind of wordy law, but the gist of it is if English is not your primary language and you have difficulty communicating effectively in English, that person may need an interpreter or translation in order to help them understand better. So it is our responsibility to ensure that we get that interpreter and help them understand. Oops. And then these languages are prevalent in our counties. So Clare is German, Macasta, Spanish and German, Gladwin, German and West German, Oscola, all numbers are less than 10. Isabella is Spanish and German, and Midland is Spanish and German as well. All right, so number one, the multiple choice question. When a consumer language barrier is recognized, what are our obligations as a provider? That is D, all of the above. We are to provide language assistance to consumer at the level necessary at no cost to the individual. We must have access to a qualified interpreter, and we must have a plan that includes who we can contact with help with an LAP consumer. All right, moving on to Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. I'm sure most of us have at least heard of the term of HIPAA. It's a pretty common term, but this is a law that was enacted in 1996 to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of healthcare, to reduce administrative costs through standardization, especially of claims and billings, and to protect the rights of consumers of healthcare and ensure the privacy and security of health information. This act applies to mental health information as well as physical health and covers three main areas. There are transactions, which is electric billing, privacy, and security. CMH and members of the provider network need to comply with HIPAA practices, and all staff need to be aware of various parts of the privacy and security sections to assure protection of information of consumers and to comply with the law. The privacy rule creates the first national standards to protect an individual's medical records and other personal health information. So further, the rule gives consumers more control over their health information. It sets boundaries on the use and release of their health records. It establishes appropriate safeguards that healthcare providers and others must achieve to protect the privacy of healthcare information. It holds violators accountable with civil and criminal penalties, and it strikes a balance when public responsibility supports disclosure of some forms of data. So in general, the agency must inform consumers about their privacy rights and how their information can be used. And this will be in the form of a privacy notice, and the agency must also obtain written acknowledgement of the consumer's receipt of that notice. And then adopt and implement privacy policies and procedures, train employees about HIPAA, designate an individual to be responsible for seeing that the privacy procedures are adopted and followed, protect consumer records so that they are not readily available to those who do not need them, and follow the minimum necessary standard in using and disclosing health information. Assure the agency has a HIPAA compliant agreement with business associates who have access to the healthcare information. So what rights do the consumers have under HIPAA privacy? This is number 2 on your test. You'll write 4 of these. So in general, consumers have the right to receive a copy of the agency privacy notice, inspect and copy their case record, a list of disclosures, request restriction on the use or disclosure of information, request confidential communications. So for example, request not to have the agency send mail to their home address. All right, I'm just going to give you guys a few minutes to write that down. All right. So cultural competence and diversity in the community. So communities are made up of a variety of people, and these people are all different in many ways. I really, really love this example because it just kind of hits home. A diverse community could be compared to a quilt that is made up of many pieces of different kinds of cloth and patterns all bound together to form a single unit. It's important to understand, manage, and value diversity in the community. So I always say that every person that is on this earth, I truly believe that they have something to offer. So just because they may have a disability or they come from a different background than you does not, you should not treat them any less. I truly believe that they have something to offer. So, when I think of a quilt, my mom, she used to make some really beautiful quilts. And I always think of this one quilt that she made. She had a bunch of leftover fabric. And when she had told me that she was just going to put it all together, I was just like, oh, it's probably not going to be that cool looking, but it was probably one of the most beautiful quilts that she had ever made. And it was, again, all from like the leftover pieces. It was definitely not a perfect quilt by any means, but, it was just so beautiful. And, a quilt, since it's made up of all the different fabric, it serves one purpose. And that's to keep you warm. It's a blanket. So, just when you think of all the different people, so whether you're working with them or, out in the community, just always remember that everyone has something to offer. And, working together, that's how a community is made. Just because everybody, does something differently. So some diversities, this is number 3. They can include gender, age, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and physical disabilities. So you may have found other diversities in people you have worked with or have known. So again, that was number 3. Just have to write 3 of those. Diversity education is not about conforming or all becoming like each other. So that's number 4. That's false. Diversity education is about conforming or becoming like each other. Again, that's false because it's not about conforming or becoming like each other. It's all about valuing diversity. Allowing, respecting, and appreciating differences are all benefits that will enhance relationships in a work or community environment. Different perspectives can enhance lives and boost morale, and we can learn from each other's unique ideas and perspectives, and we can all appreciate diversity. So just, especially since you will be working with people, just keep that in mind. Now, everyone is going to do the task the same as you. Sometimes there's different ways of doing things. So always keep an open mind. You may learn something new from somebody by doing that. Prejudice is not just about race, it is a natural human emotion. We all have a tendency to fear or distrust people and ideas that are different from us or what we have grown accustomed to. It is important to learn ways of overcoming this fear so we can accept each other for who we are. We all have the right to be treated with respect and equality. So some good pointers for communication in a diverse community are openness, active listening, respectful language, and sensitivity. All right, moving on to infection control and blood-borne pathogens. All right, infection control is preventing the spread of germs that cause illness and infection. Infection control starts with understanding germs and how they are spread. About germs, everyone comes in contact with millions of germs, microorganisms each day. All germs need warmth, moisture, darkness, and oxygen to live and grow, and many germs are harmless and are needed for our bodies to function in a healthy way. An infection can be local in one spot, like an infected cut, or it can be systematic, which is throughout the whole body, like food poisoning or pneumonia. So there are 3 ways that germs are spread, and this is number 5. That is direct contact, indirect contact, or droplet spread. Direct contact means that germs are spread from one infected person to another. An example of this would be as if the person infected with a cold putting his hands to his mouth while coughing or sneezing and then touching or contacting another person before he has washed his hands. Indirect contact, this means that germs are spread from one infected person to another person through an object. The germ from the person is infected contaminates the object, and the person who touches the object is then contaminated. Indirect contact is a common way for germs to spread between people who live, work, and play together. Droplet spread, that means that germs are spread through the air from one infected person to another person, and the germs are airborne and are carried over short distances. When people talk, cough, or sneeze, they are spreading germs through the air. Controlling the spread of germs. Knowing how germs is spread is the first step in practicing infection control and preventing illness. So knowing how to control the spread of germs is the second step. DSPs can protect both themselves and the individuals with whom they work with germs or contamination by doing the following. Know and practice standard precautions, especially hand washing and gloving. Keep yourself, the individual, and the environment clean. Be aware of the signs and symptoms of illness and infection and accurately record and report them to the doctor. Bloodborne pathogens. So this is number 6. Bloodborne pathogens are infectious organisms that are spread by direct contact with infected blood or body fluids. So the answer to number 6 is blood or body fluids. They can be transmitted through sexual contact, intravenous drug use, or exposure of mucous membranes or non-intact skin. Hepatitis B, C, and HIV are all bloodborne viral diseases. And these diseases can cause a lifelong infection, including cirrhosis, liver cancer, liver failure, and even death. Blood may be present in any body fluid. Normally, your skin would act as a barrier to keep viruses out, but even tiny breaks or cracks in the skin from common conditions like dermatitis, acne, chapping, and broken cuticles can be doorways for viruses to enter the body. And this is why protective equipment is so important. Standard precautions. The only safe thing to do is to use standard precautions, and this means treating all blood or body fluids as potentially infectious. Blood, even if you can't see it, can be almost anywhere. So following safe work practices, including proper hand washing, disposal of sharps, good housekeeping, and use of personal protective equipment can greatly minimize your risk. Standard precautions can include hand washing and using disposable gloves, and the wearing of personal protective equipment protect both the individual and the DSP from the spreads of germs and infections. And the DSP should use these precautions when coming in contact with blood and all other body fluids, secretions, and excretions, which is urine and feces, or whether or not they contain visible blood, when touching mucous membranes such as the eyes or nose, and when dealing with skin breakdown such as a cut, abrasion, or wound. And body fluids include blood, blood products, secretions, semen, vaginal secretions, nasal secretions, sputum, saliva from dental procedures, excretions, urine, feces, and vomit. Hand washing. If you don't know already, hand washing is very important. I think we were all very well trained on this, especially during COVID, but pretty much anytime you start a new job, it's requirement for most jobs to go over blood-borne pathogens and infection control, and hand washing is very important. So frequent, thorough, and vigorous hand washing will help in decreasing the spread of infection. Germs are spread more frequently by fingers. Germs are spread more frequently by hands and fingers than by any other means. And that is number 7, the true and false question. That is true. Again, number 7 is true. So when DSP should wash their hands? DSP should always wash their hands when they come to work and before leaving. Hands should be washed at work before touching any food, an individual's medicine, kitchen utensils and equipment, someone's skin that has cuts, sores, or wounds, before putting on disposable gloves, and before using the bathroom. And then DSP should always wash their hands after using the bathroom, sneezing, coughing, or blowing one's nose, touching one's eyes, nose, mouth, or other body parts, touching bodily fluids or excretions, and touching someone's soiled clothing or bed linens. So always make sure you're washing your hands. And then gloving. Practicing standard precautions also includes the wearing of disposable single-use latex gloves whenever the DSP comes in contact with bodily fluids. Putting on disposable gloves and taking them off correctly is especially important in preventing the spread of germs and infection. Gloves should be used only one time and changed after each use. New gloves should be put on each time a DSP works with a different individual. Used or contaminated gloves should be thrown away, and gloves become contaminated after each use and can spread germs between individuals if used more than once and if they are not properly disposed of. If bodily fluid or blood touches the skin, wash the area vigorously and thoroughly with soap and warm water. And if the gloves tear or break, take them off and again vigorously and thoroughly wash your hands. So when DSP should always use gloves for providing or assisting an individual with rectal or genital care, toothbrushing or flossing, shaving with a blade razor, menstrual care, bathing or showering, cleaning bathrooms, cleaning up urine, feces, vomit, or blood, cleaning toilets, bedpans, urinals, providing wound care, handling soiled linen or clothing, giving care when the DSP has open cuts or oozing sores at his or her hands, or providing first aid and disposing of waste in leak-proof airtight containers. So, if you are doing heavy personal care or working in a home that requires that, not everyone's going to be doing this type of personal care too. But just, if you're doing any type of personal care or cleaning up any kind of messes or anything like that, just make sure you're wearing gloves. When I started doing this line of work, I became obsessed with wearing gloves, and even at my house, when I was cleaning or even doing laundry, I would put gloves on. So 5 years ago at my baby shower, a couple of my friends had got me a huge box of gloves for when I was going to be changing diapers, because they had always seen me wearing gloves. So I had seen a lot of staff, especially when I was supervising, not wearing gloves and doing personal care and stuff like that. Just wear the gloves. It's going to protect you. You don't want to get sick too. And plus, I personally just don't like, I'm apparently a germaphobe now, so I just wear gloves. It is a best practice to keep natural nails short and avoid the use of artificial nails when providing personal care. Research has shown that healthcare providers who wear artificial nails are more likely to harbor germs than those who don't, and DSPs with long nails are at risk of puncturing or tearing disposable gloves. Alcohol-based hand rubs or hand sanitizers may also be used, and they provide a great alternative to hand washing for the following reasons. Alcohol-based hand rubs, foam or gel, kill more effectively and more quickly than hand washing with soap and water. They are less damaging to skin than soap and water, resulting in less dryness and irritation. And they require less time than hand washing with soap and water. Bottles and dispensers can be placed at the point of care so that they are more accessible. So other personal protective equipment, or PPE, this can include a face mask or eye shields, and this type of PPE will be vary depending on the level of precautions required. So you should always remember to keep hands away from face, limit surfaces touch, and change gloves when torn or heavily contaminated. to perform hand hygiene. So other PPE, so if you do have to wear additional PPE, you're going to put your gown on first, and this is to fully cover your torso from the neck to knee, arms to the end of wrists, and wrap around the back, and then it will fasten on the back. You're going to wear a gown during procedures that are likely to generate splashes or sprays of blood, bodily fluids, secretions, or excretions, and then you're going to remove a soiled gown as soon as possible and wash hands after removing the gown. A mask or respirator, again, most of us are pretty familiar with how to wear a mask. Luckily, we don't have to wear it a whole lot anymore, but sometimes, you still may have to do it. Just make sure that if you are wearing a mask, that you're wearing it properly, because if you are wearing a mask, that means you have to, and you want to protect yourself. So especially most PPE, it's not made to be comfortable, it's made to protect you. So make sure that you are wearing it properly. So covering, your nose completely and your mouth, and then it's tight on there. Goggles and face shields, you're going to place it over face and eyes and adjust to fit. Wearing mask and eye protection or a face shield during procedures that are likely to generate splashes or sprays of blood, bodily fluid, secretions, and excretions. So that's protecting your face essentially, but your eyes, so that way, droplets don't get in there. And then gloves, we just kind of went over gloving, but to properly wear them, those will be the last things that you put on, and that's going to kind of cover your gown right at your wrist there. Cleaning and disinfecting. The second way for DSPs to prevent the spread of germs is through cleaning and disinfecting the environment. DSPs should be careful not to transfer infection to others, and equally important, the DSP should be careful not to be infected by others. The DSP can help do this by being clean themselves, keeping the home clean and germ-free, and assisting the individuals in the home to maintain good personal hygiene. Routine daily cleaning of all household surfaces and other items with soap and water is the most effective method for removing germs. Sometimes an additional cleaning is needed to be germ-free. This extra step is called disinfection. So that is number 8. Disinfection is the process of killing germs after cleaning with soap and water, then rinsing with clear water. Disinfecting usually requires soaking or drenching the surface or item for several minutes with a special cleaning solution. This soaking allows the cleaning solution to kill the remaining germs. All right. All right, moving on to internal corporate compliance reporting, Deficit Reduction Act, and sensitivity training. So I will warn you that this presentation itself is very wordy. I always joke around that it has lots of words, just a lot of technical information. But I will kind of give a gist of it. We just have to go over that. All right. So our compliance officer, CHS's compliance officer is Mark Lee, and that is number 9. So in order to effectively enforce the compliance program and incorporate policies, CHS expects the employees to report perceived violations of the program and or applicable federal, state, and third-party rules to the CHS Compliance Liaison Officer. So again, that is Mark Lee. He's our payroll guy, but he's also the compliance officer. So employees and subcontractors may report any compliance-related concerns to the CHS Compliance Liaison Officer by any of the following methods. So you can draft a written note and place it in a sealed envelope marked confidential, and place such envelope in the compliance officer's internal mailbox, or you can directly speak to the compliance officer. All reports of compliance-related concerns will be taken seriously, and the compliance liaison will look into all reports made and respond promptly. However, some reported concerns may be merely seeking advice or clarification, and they will be handled accordingly. Some reported concerns might provide information that is too sparse to act upon. So any HR issues should be directed to HR and not the compliance officer. CHS is committed to using good faith efforts to comply with applicable healthcare laws, regulations, and third-party payer requirements. A compliance program plan exists to provide a leadership-driven plan that establishes the principles and standards to which CHS staff are expected to adhere. The Michigan False Claims Act. This is a state law that is established to prohibit fraud in the obtaining of benefits or payments in connections with the medical assistance program, to prohibit kickbacks or bribes in connection with the program, and to prohibit conspiracies in obtaining benefits or payments. The law authorizes the Attorney General to investigate alleged violations of this act and provides for civil actions to recover money received by the reason of fraudulent conduct through civil fines and other prescribed remedies and penalties. The law also establishes non-retaliation protections for employees in reporting suspected fraud and abuse. The False Claims Act. This is a federal law that establishes criminal and civil liability when any covered person or covered entity improperly receives reimbursement from or avoids payments to the federal government. The act specifically excludes tax fraud, which is covered by statutes. Due to its role in processing payments from the Medicaid program and state general funds, individuals and entities that do business with CHS are covered entities. The FCA includes a quantum provision, which literally means who sues on behalf of the king as well as for himself. This provision allows a private citizen to file a suit in the name of the U.S. government, charging fraud by government contractors and other entities that receive or use government funds. The filer of the suit may share in any money recovered. So the following are types of fraud presented under the FCA. That would be billing for goods and services that were never delivered or rendered. So that would be and kind of an example of that is why we have that EVB, the electronic system, to clock in and out with, so Wells Sky. So, you know, if you clocked in somewhere or, you know, wrote down that you were at this time, but you weren't there, that's fraud. And so that's why, you know, we have to have certain laws that cover this to prevent that from happening. Submitting false service records or samples in order to show better than actual performance, performing inappropriate or unnecessary medical procedures, billing in order to increase revenue instead of billing to reflect actual work performed, upcoding, so that would be inflating bills by using diagnosis billing codes that suggest a more expensive illness or treatment, double billing, charging more than once for the same service or goods. So that's why two staff can't be clocked in at the same time at a location, because that would be double billing. Certain locations you may have two staff working. Majority of our cases, it's one-on-one staffing. Prescribing a medicine or recommending a type of treatment or diagnosis regime in order to win kickbacks from hospitals, labs, or pharmaceutical companies. Billing for unlicensed or unapproved drugs. Forging physician signatures when such signatures are required for reimbursement from Medicare or Medicaid. Billing for work or tests that were never performed. Phantom employees and doctor time slips, so charging for employees that were not actually on the job, or billing for made up hours in order to maximize reimbursement. A grant recipient charges the government for costs not related to the program, and billing Medicare for services that were not performed or that were unnecessary. So number 10, that multiple choice question, that is D, all of the above. Whistleblower employee protections. Whistleblowers are those private citizens who file suit on behalf of the government to recover damages incurred by the federal government as a result of the contractor fraud or other false claims act. Whistleblowers may be entitled to a significant portion of the proceeds should the suit prevail and are protected from the retaliation by provision of the statute. So in particular, any retaliation against an employee or a contractor for lawfully reporting alleged violation of the False Claims Act, or who is discharged, demoted, suspended, threatened, harassed, or any other manner discriminated against in the terms and conditions of employment by his or her employer, because of lawful acts done by the employee on behalf of his employer or others in furtherance of an action under the law, including investigation for, initiation of, testimony for, or assistance in an act filed to be filed under the law, shall be entitled to all relief necessary to make the employee whole. That was a lot of words. So basically the gist of corporate compliance and all of that. So the definition of compliance is the action of complying with a command or the state of meeting rules or standards. So basically in the corporate world, it's defined as the process of making sure that our company, which is CHS, and the employees follow all the laws, regulations, standards, and all ethical practices that apply to our organization. So it covers both internal policies and procedures, as well as federal and state laws. So we have our own policy, CHS has their own policies and procedures that we have to follow, as well as the state and federal laws. So enforcing compliance helps our company prevent and detect violations of the rules, which protects our organization from fines and lawsuits. So that is the gist of that. I know that was a very wordy. All right, so moving on to sensitivity training. So this is hearing loss. Some of you may have had some experience working with individuals who have either had hearing loss their entire life or have developed hearing loss later in life. So here's just a little bit of information to kind of help you learn to work with some of the individuals. So deafness and hard of hearing, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. This refers to hard of hearing conditions as those that affect the frequency and or intensity of one's hearing. Although the term deaf is often mistakenly used to refer to all individuals with hearing difficulty, it actually describes to a more limited group. According to the CDC, deaf individuals do not hear well enough to rely on hearing processes, speech, and language. Individuals who are hard of hearing differ from deaf individuals in that they use their hearing to assist in communication with others. So someone who is considered deaf, they cannot rely on their hearing to get information and to basically understand what is being told to them. But people who are hard of hearing, they can still hear, and they can use it to assist, with communication, but they, can't hear it as well, so they may need things repeated or things like that. So number 11 and 12. So hearing loss. Again, hearing loss is a decrease in hearing sensitivity of one or both ears, and it can be caused by many physical conditions such as childhood illness, heredity, injury, age, or prolonged exposure to noise. Hearing can vary with mild to moderate hearing loss, and individuals may be able to hear sound but have difficulty distinguishing specific speech patterns in a conversation. And then deafness. This is a profound or total loss of hearing in both ears that results in not hearing well enough to rely on hearing to process speech and language. So there's preferred terminology by those that have a hearing loss. So it's acceptable to, talk to them, or it's acceptable language to use. You can say a person who has a speech disorder, deaf, or hard of hearing, but it's unacceptable to offensive to call someone deaf or dumb, deaf mute, or hearing impaired. And I know some of those terms, they sound very harsh. We have come a long way with working with individuals with disabilities and using person-centered language first. But I was just watching a movie here not too long ago. I believe the movie was made in either the late 80s, maybe early 90s. And one of the main characters was deaf, so he could not hear at all. The only way that he could communicate with somebody is, having a written down conversation. He carried a notebook around with him. But throughout the whole movie, the other characters in the movie referred to him as deaf and dumb, but that was a common term to call someone back then, but it's no longer acceptable. Again, we've come a long ways with learning how to work with individuals and how to talk to them and how to refer to them. So just, always try to remember to use that person-centered or that person-first language. So barriers to accessing healthcare. People with hearing loss have challenges accessing healthcare, and for various reasons, the method of communication that suits them best may not be understood or accommodated by the healthcare provider, which results in poor engagement. Some of these barriers can be related to access, attitude, competency, safety risk, potential poor care, or stress. So some guidelines for better communication. Here's some tips for a good listening environment. You want to decrease the background noise whenever possible. Modify lighting and seating arrangements. Provide good lighting. Keep light on your face, not behind you, otherwise it will cause a harsh glare or shadow that makes lip reading difficult. Encourage groups to sit closer to the speaker and to each other, and make sure only one person speaks at a time. Tips for the speaker. This is number 13. You just have to write 3 of them. So again, tips for the speaker, make sure that you are face-to-face. That's probably the easiest method to communicate someone. Communicate to face the listener while speaking, so don't turn away. Be patient with listeners. Remember, there is a logical reason behind most lip reading errors and listening errors. And encourage them to wear hearing aids. Offer help with obtaining assistive listening devices at lecture sites, theaters, and places of worship. So especially if hearing loss has developed later in life, and the person's not used to wearing hearing aids, it can be an adjustment period. I've worked with individuals who later in life have slowly begun to lose their hearing, and they needed hearing aids. Sometimes it was very difficult to get them to wear them. Some people find them not very comfy, or they just forget to put them in. They're not used to having to have that assistive device. So just always encourage it and, help them through that. Ask questions using an either or format or a yes or no format. So just, asking simple questions that only needs a simple answer. And then try to be understanding and caring when someone with a hearing problem asks you to help them understand better. You may need to repeat or rephrase a question because if it's just understood, just repeat it or rephrase it. Give important information to the listener in writing for reference. In a group situation, repeat questions or comments. If someone joins a conversation in progress, give the newcomer a short summary of the topic before proceeding with your discussion. Be flexible with the type of cues, paraphrasing, and clarifications. And remember, it takes 2 people to hold a conversation, and both people have to do their part to make that conversation work. So it's communicating with deaf or hard of hearing individuals. It is appropriate to tap a person who is deaf gently on the arm or shoulder to gain their attention. You want to look directly at the individual, face the light, speak clearly in a normal tone of voice, and keep your hands away from your face. Use body language. It offers important clues about what you're saying, so don't shout or speak too loudly. Ask about the best way to communicate and arrange for a sign language interpreter if needed. If the person uses an interpreter, speak directly to the person who is deaf, not the interpreter. When calling an individual who is hard of hearing, let the phone ring longer than usual. Speak clearly, prepared to repeat who you are and the reason for the call if asked. Again, rephrase rather than repeat. Ask information about their hearing loss and listening needs, and ask for tips on how you should speak and what you should do to facilitate the communication. Many people who are deaf prefer to use text messaging or video relay service to communicate. TTY is not as common, but it's still used by some. If you do not have ready access to TTY, you can dial 711 to reach the National Telecommunications Relay Service. And ask the person what method they prefer. Never assume the same method works best for everyone. All right, moving on to environmental safety and fire prevention. All right, so during orientation, you should become familiar with the specific needs of the individuals residing in the home. So make sure you're familiar with the safety needs pointed out in the PCP. We're going to be going over PCPs here in just a minute, but if you haven't already done orientation in the home yet, you will be trained on your consumer. And any safety needs should be addressed in the PCP. So what supplies are recommended at a minimum? So latex or similar gloves are ideal for cleanup and help prevent spread of illness or disease when accidents or emergencies may occur. A first aid kit, battery-powered radio, flashlights, and extra batteries can keep you informed and able to move about safely in a power outage. So I always recommend that, everyone should have a first aid kit in their car and in their home. You never know when an emergency situation will happen. I have kids, so I always keep one in my car because we always have boo-boos. So we always keep an unlimited amount of Band-Aids in my car. But you just never know when you might need it. So just keeping a basic kit in the car, I always recommend that, and also in the home, so that way, you can have the basic first aid things. And especially a battery powered radio or flashlights, because, what if your cell phone dies, you won't have the outlet to charge that. So, just keeping some battery operated stuff too. So severe storms and tornado safety, we are definitely in that time of year where we're getting thunderstorms. We're finally getting rain. I've been very happy these past couple of weeks because we were so dry for so long that I was wondering if it was ever going to rain. And last night or yesterday, at least here in Mount Pleasant, it downpoured. So my plants were very happy. So I have a discussion about the safest place in the home to be if a severe storm or tornado occurs. If a basement is not available or practical for your use, the safest place is usually the smallest centrally located room without windows. And that is number 16. That is the centrally located room without windows if a basement is not available. And then 14 and 15, 14, a watch means conditions are favorable for a severe storm or tornado to occur. And then 15 is a warning, and that means that a severe storm or tornado is actually happening and you should take cover. So again, watch, if you get a notification that there's, thunderstorm watch, that means that the weather is perfect, that, a thunderstorm could potentially happen, but a warning means that it is happening, you need to take cover. If you're traveling when conditions are favorable for a tornado, drive to the nearest large building that can be used as a shelter. Stay near a shelter until the threat has passed. If you're driving and a warning is issued, seek shelter in a large building. If a building is not available, you may need to lie down in a ditch or ravine. Do not try to outrun a tornado in your vehicle. Tornadoes are very unpredictable and they can change directions very, very quickly. Winter storms, that winter will be here before we know it. Winter storms call for special precautions. Snowfall, blizzards, and ice storms can trap people inside for days. Snow and ice can break power lines and cause loss of electricity and heat. And a winter storm may also cause utility failure. Extended exposure to cold temperatures may cause injury or death. So what precautions can you take? Again, a battery-powered radio is your best source of information in an emergency. Draw water into as many containers as possible. Gather battery-powered lanterns, flashlights, etc. in case you lose your power. And make sure you have a home that has a corded phone or a cell phone. If candles are used, be very, very cautious. Candle holders should surround the candle totally like a glass globe or a fishbowl. Do not leave a candle burning unattended, and battery-operated candles or camp lights are a good idea. I highly suggest that you don't use candles in a power outage unless you absolutely have to. This memory has stuck with me for many years. Many years ago, back where I grew up, a family, we got a bad storm. The neighborhood lost power, so the family thought it would be fun to camp out in their backyard. And the thunderstorm happened later in the evening, so they did need to use candles. They used candles to kind of light up their home before they went outside. They forgot to blow some of them out, and during the night, their house caught on fire and it actually burned down. So I always think about that during a power outage. So I personally try and keep flashlights around the house because I live out kind of in the middle of nowhere, so we lose power frequently. So I prefer to use the flashlights and things like that. But if you have to use a candle, just please be cautious and don't forget about them. If you experience heat failure, you want to dress in layers and keep moving. If your home has a fuel delivery, remember to assure an adequate supply of fuel is available at all times, especially if a winter storm is predicted. I'm not sure how many of our consumers have like a propane tank out in their yard. But just remember that, you know, if there is a winter storm coming or if it's going to be very cold, make sure that you're kind of helping them keep track to make sure that they have enough fuel. Don't be like myself this past winter. That's my husband's job to go out there and check. I can't put him at blame because I didn't do it either. But one of the first very cold weekends that we got at the beginning of winter, we did check our levels and we were down to below, I think it was like 8%. We were not anticipating to get another fill for a couple more weeks. And that Friday, my husband came in, he's like, "Oh no, Sarah, we're about to run out of propane." Luckily that weekend we did not, because you can get propane fills on the weekend. It's just a little bit more pricey. So if you know a winter storm is coming or just at the beginning of winter, make sure you're checking those levels because you do not want to run out or else you'll be very cold. Floods. Floods usually occur in Michigan during the spring and fall when rainfall and water runoff are at its peak. Floods can interrupt power and make roads impassable. The severe floods rarely occur, but knowing how to prepare and respond can prevent disaster. So again, disastrous floods, they don't occur that much in Michigan, but they do happen. Here a few years ago, you know, Mount Pleasant got hit pretty hard with some floods, and then also in Midland County, the dam in Sanford, when that broke, that was devastating. That devastated the whole area, and you know, just watching the videos of that, I was so sad to see that. Lots of homes got destroyed there. So notification of a flood or watch or warning is received by radio and television, sirens and alert monitors, emergency personnel who go door to door, National Weather Service or local emergency jurisdiction. If a flood warning is issued for your area, local government officials will issue evacuation instructions over the television or radio. Never drive through an area where water is covering the road or moving swiftly across the road. Turn around and find another route. So if you come up to an area that is covered with water, do not try and drive through that because for one, it can damage your vehicle. And two, maybe the road's not even there. When Mount Pleasant flooded a couple years back, I was driving to work and I came up to a flooded area and the water was actually kind of moving very swiftly through. So like, you know, you can actually, there was like a current in there and it reminded me of rapids. Anyways, I turned around, took an alternate route to work. On my way home, when I came up to it, thankfully that morning I didn't drive through it because the road was actually gone. So, you know, if there's a flooded area, just don't even trust it, just take a different route. Air conditioner failure. Air conditioning failure can pose a serious threat to elderly or those with other health conditions. You want to make sure that you shut all curtains. Don't open windows unless it will let cooler air in. Go to a lower level of the home if possible to stay cool. Foods that spoil. If a power failure continues for a long time, food may begin to spoil. A loaded freezer will keep foods frozen 36 to 48 hours if the door is kept shut. Avoid opening the freezer and refrigerator more than necessary. Transfer foods you will use soon into an insulated chest type freezer. If you can obtain ice, transfer as much as possible into those coolers. Water shortage precautions. Keep a supply of bottled water in case of an emergency. Fill bathtubs if a water shortage is possible. And this will allow for filling toilets, washing dishes, personal care, etc. Gas leaks. If you think there is a gas leak, you want to evacuate immediately. Do not turn any electrical switches on or off. Do not use a telephone. Do not use any matches or lighters, and go to a neighbor's and call the gas company right away. Carbon monoxide poisoning. This is a clear odorless gas, and the symptoms may be headaches, dizziness, and sleepiness. Carbon monoxide detectors are recommended. And if it goes off or you suspect carbon monoxide poisoning, evacuate immediately. So fire safety and prevention. Immediate evacuation is the key to safety in a fire or smoke emergency. Your first priority if you smell smoke, see flames, or the fire alarm sounds is assisting people out of the home immediately. Fighting a fire is never recommended. So number 17 is evacuate immediately. Remember, especially when you are with your consumers, your job is to get them to safety. So fighting the fire is not recommended. You want to get them out as soon as possible. So fire extinguisher, an ABC multi-purpose extinguisher will put out most fires that start in a home, and an extinguisher is useless unless you know how to operate it. So to use a fire extinguisher, you're going to hold the extinguisher upright and you're going to pull the pin out. You want to stand at least 6 to 8 feet from the fire. Do not get any closer. And aim the nozzle at the base of the fire and squeeze the handles. You want to then sweep side to side, slowly moving closely as the flames diminish. Fire extinguishers last only about 8 to 10 seconds, so fires can and do reignite. Fires will double in size every 19 seconds. So that is why assisting the people out is your main concern, not fighting those fires. So the fires, if they can double in size every 19 seconds, fire extinguishers only last up to 10 seconds. So you don't have very much time to get those people out. So that should be your first, getting everybody out into safety. Safety first. So protection plans and consideration. Protection plans are recommended. So be sure you know all the following information. And so you should be able to know how to evacuate your consumer in an emergency. So if you have any questions or concerns with that, you can make sure you're asking the family members or your supervisors on how to assist those individuals. So are there enough working smoke detectors to provide sufficient warning? At minimum, there should be at least one on every level and outside of sleeping areas. Are detectors properly placed according to manufacturer instructions? Are detectors tested on a regular basis? Are batteries replaced at least once a year? And don't take the battery out of a smoke detector because it keeps going off due to cooking. If you are having nuisance alarms, check to see if the detector is located too close to an area that would cause problems such as the kitchen or the bathroom. I always have to laugh at that nuisance alarms because anytime that, I don't know why this is, but anytime that my husband cooks, he sets off the alarm and he's not really burning anything, but our poor little dog, we have a rescue dog. We've had him for almost 8 years now, but he's very sensitive to loud noises. And if I'm cooking, he's fine. He's standing right next to me while I'm cooking. But if my husband's cooking, he goes and hides in the bathroom because he knows that alarm is going to go off. But we never take the battery out. We keep it in the same spot because at least we know it works. All right. So moving on to trauma care. My other slide thing. All right, so a lot of our, unfortunately, a lot of our individuals that we support have experienced some kind of trauma. So if you've never worked with an individual that has had trauma, here's, this PowerPoint is going to be very informative, offers lots of suggestions, gives a little bit of insight on people who have experienced trauma. But, and even you yourself may have experienced some kind of trauma. All right, so number 18, many of the most difficult individuals in your homes have experienced complex trauma. Trauma can affect an individual's behavior, feelings, relationships, and their view of the world in profound ways. An individual's traumatic stress reactions and other responses to trauma can disrupt a home environment. It's not the answer to everything, but it's another piece of the puzzle. It's not an excuse, but it may be an explanation. So again, if somebody has experienced trauma, a lot of individuals do have behavioral problems, and that's because of the trauma that they have experienced. And you do not recover from trauma overnight. Some people may never recover completely, but there are different ways to learn how to cope and how to help manage those situations. So what is trauma? A traumatic experience threatens the life or physical integrity of a child or of someone critically important to that child, such as a parent, grandparent, or sibling. It causes an overwhelming sense of terror, helplessness, and horror. And it produces physical changes such as pounding heart, rapid breathing, trembling or dizziness, or loss of bladder or bowel control. So there are two types of trauma. The first one is acute trauma. So that is a single event that lasts for a long or I'm sorry, that lasts for a short time. Complex trauma is the experience of multiple traumatic events. So an example of acute trauma, I'll use myself for example. When I was 16, I had just gotten my driver's license. I was super excited to, I thought I was free and super independent by being able to drive. My grandma had let me borrow her car. I literally had my driver's license, I think it was for 3 days. And I was coming home from track practice and I was turning left and I got T-boned. I clearly did not see the car that hit me and I got hit. It was my fault. And when I got T-boned, it was a pretty bad accident. Thankfully, I was in the vehicle by myself. I didn't have a passenger, but I, completely totaled out the car. I still remember that event very vividly. I remember getting hit and I remember the noise it made. I remember the glass breaking and how I could see it as like, it reminded me of a spider web. And then it was like the world just stopped for a second and then all of a sudden the glass came at me. So anyways, that event to me was very traumatizing. I never wanted to drive again. I was terrified to get behind the wheel. And then more so once I started, my mom actually made me get behind the wheel that same day because she didn't want me to be scared to drive. She was very worried that I would never drive again. So she, got me right behind the wheel. She was with me. We went down side streets and just to kind of get me going again. But even to this day, many, many moons later, I am still terrified to turn left. I don't like it, but I will and I can do it. I just make sure to take my time. I look both ways 100 times and I attempt to be a safe driver. So that's just one example. To me, again, that was a traumatic thing. And if you're ever driving with me and I decide not to turn left at a busy intersection, that is why. But complex trauma, this is a trauma that has happened multiple times. So, thankfully, I've never experienced complex trauma, but just that one traumatic event has lasted with me my whole life. I can't even imagine someone that has been through some sort of trauma multiple times. You just don't get over that. So the term complex trauma is used to describe a specific kind of chronic trauma and it affects on children and adults. Multiple traumatic events that begin at a very young age and events caused by the actions or inactions of adults who should have been caring for and protecting that child. And over time, complex trauma can get in the way of healthy development and affect the individual in the following ways. So it can affect their ability to trust others, their sense of personal safety, emotional reactions, and the ability to manage emotions. So that's where a lot of those emotional outbursts comes in. So that quote unquote bad behavior, ability to navigate and adjust to life's changes, and physical and emotional responses to stress. So some of the factors that factors that influence responses to a traumatic event can include age, developmental age, perception of the danger faced, past experience with trauma, challenges faced after the trauma, the presence and availability of adults who can offer help, reassurance, and protection. So responses to trauma, hyperarousal, so nervousness, jumpiness, quickness to startle. So those are some signs that someone has experienced trauma, not all the time, but someone who has experienced trauma, they may get startled very easily. They get scared in certain situations where they shouldn't be. Re-experiencing. So sometimes they may start seeing those images and they just, they could be in a coffee shop and then all of a sudden those images can come to them at that moment and they can't get out of that moment. Avoidance and withdrawal. So they may feel numb, shut down, or separated from normal life. So they could be really quiet. They might not want to share their feelings. They might not know how to. They may pull away from activities and relationships, and they may avoid things that may prompt the memories of the trauma. So what are some examples of trauma? That could be screaming or shouting, shadow on the wall, the sight of blood, scar, the dark, stomach ache or headache, an angry expression on an adult's face, being dropped off at school, seeing another child get hurt, losing a tooth, the color red, Santa Claus, the smell of alcohol, seeing a group of young men hanging out on a street corner, or having to go to the bathroom. So if you know that you are working with an individual who has unfortunately experienced some kind of trauma, you want to try and get as much information as you can so that way you can help them cope with it. So back when I was a DSP, I had picked up a shift at a different location that I had not been to. I knew some of the individuals there had experienced trauma. It was an all male house, so it was during, I'm a huge hockey fan. I'm a big Detroit Red Wings fan. So I own a lot of Detroit Red Wings t-shirts. And since I knew I was going to this particular house, I was like, oh my gosh, it's playoff season. We'll watch a hockey game tonight and, make a fun night out of it. So I wore my Detroit Red Wings t-shirt. Well, if you're not familiar with the hockey team, they are red. And so I wore a red shirt. And I was not aware that one of the individuals there unfortunately experienced trauma and he had an issue with seeing the color red. They were slowly working on it with him. But when I had walked in, first of all, he didn't know who I was. And then he saw me in red. And it caused a very big behavior. And that was actually one of my first experiences physically seeing somebody else go through something like that outside of my personal life. So I was very unsure of how to work through that situation. I did, in the future pick up some other shifts there. So I learned my lesson. I never wore red there again. But that's, we're getting to know your consumers and building those relationships and bonds so that way you can help them and help them cope through certain situations. And so you don't, do what I did and wear red and cause a behavior. So talking about trauma, talking about certain events all the time, bringing up the topic seemingly out of the blue, be confused or mistaken about details, or remember only fragments of what happened. And just so you know too, trauma can come up at any time in life. I worked with an individual that experienced trauma when he was a very young child, and he was when I started working with him, he was in his mid 50s, never talked about ever experiencing any type of trauma. We did not know about it. And one day we went to a coffee shop, random place, and he started having, some really extreme anxiety. After that moment, he was able to talk through of kind of what happened to him when he was younger. And again, none of us knew any of this. This was all new to us. And once he started actually talking about it, he just talked about it all the time for months. And that was his way of kind of getting it out and how to kind of like work through that trauma. And I should mention too that he had just moved to the area. So when he had gone into that coffee shop was new to him. And for some reason that kind of triggered his past. So what you may see problems with someone concentrating, so learning or taking in new information, difficulty going to sleep or staying asleep. A lot of individuals that have been through trauma don't like to sleep because they have very bad nightmares. They have emotional instability, so they can be very moody, sad, angry, aggressive. Traumatized young children, they may be sensitive to loud noises. They may revert to behaviors that they have previously outgrown. So they may start sucking their thumb or lose skills that they had developed. So they may start wetting the bed or having more frequent accidents, even though they should be, potty trained. They may be clingy and unwilling to separate from familiar adults. They may have that attachment issues. They may resist leaving places where they feel safe, reject or avoid being touched. They may be confused about what's dangerous and who to go to for protection. So they might not have those safety skills. Traumatized school-age children, they alternate between being very shy and withdrawn to unusually unaggressive. So it's, one spectrum to another. They can just, not say anything. They may be very quiet, or they may just act out a lot and actually be very physical with hitting and such. They may have difficulties learning. They demand attention, so increased demands for food, toys, etc. Revert to old behaviors, show specific anxieties and fears such as fear of the dark. Traumatized adolescents or adults, they live in the moment and they have trouble imagining or planning for the future. They may over or underestimate danger. They may behave in aggressive or disruptive ways. They may abuse drugs or alcohol. That's very common for adults that have experienced trauma, or even in, teenage children, they go to that. drugs or alcohol to kind of soothe their problems. They may engage in reckless or self-destructive behaviors, including cutting and risky sexual behaviors. So most of us have heard about PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, and this is diagnosed when the person displays several traumatic stress reactions, and the reactions persist for a long period of time, and the reactions get in the way of normal life. So getting development back on track. Trauma survivors can learn new ways of thinking, relating, or responding. Rational thought and self-awareness can help children override primitive brain responses. Unlearning and rebuilding takes time. So what is safety? Physical safety is not the same as psychologically safety. To feel psychologically safe, individuals need to feel oriented in their own environment. They need to have control over some aspects of their lives. Having control over your own life is so important, because being independent and being an individual, or being an individual and being independent is so important. And to know what will happen next. So having that routine set in place. So, basically no surprises. To be seen and appreciated for who they are. So to have that self-worth and to have a sense of connection and continuity with their past. Individuals who have been through trauma are less likely to feel safe than those who have not experienced trauma. And these individuals may have real life worries pertaining to safety. So some examples are, will my stepfather seek revenge because I got him arrested? Will my sister be okay in her abusive marriage? Will my mom get so depressed without me to cheer her up that she goes back to drugs? So rules and control. When explaining house rules, you don't want to overwhelm, but you want to stress protection. Rules are set in place to protect you. You want to be flexible. And then you want to provide opportunities for control within limits by providing an individual control over their own environment. So where they live, or maybe even where they want their bed in their room, making them have their own decisions for what they want to do with their life. What they want to do for activities. So some people, this may sound bizarre, but some people don't know how to have fun. They don't know how to learn new tasks, or even like what to do in their spare time to keep their mind busy. So you as a staff member can help them learn some of those tasks. Let the individual know what will happen next, such as the location and schedule for the day. Predictability, or just even letting them know what's going to happen. Upcoming doctor or dentist visits. So a lot of people don't like the doctors or even dentists. They're scared of them. So you don't want to just take them to, show up in front of the doctor's office and be like, okay, we're walking in. You want to let them know that they have that appointment. Timing and location of mental health treatment, legal proceedings, court dates, etc. Especially if they have to, any legal proceedings, appointments with CMH. Unfortunately, a lot of people with trauma, they don't like people with authority, because people with authority have either let them down or have helped them in the past. So they don't know how to trust them. And so letting them, build those relationships with those people, or just letting them know that those events are happening, especially even like court dates, maybe they haven't had a good history of going to court. Maybe something awful has happened there. So just letting them know that predictability. And then contact with caseworker and other members of the team. Be an emotional container. So you as a staff member, you may have to be prepared to be an emotional container. You have to be willing and prepared to tolerate strong emotional reactions. That the person can be totally okay and happy as can be, and then 1 minute they may not be okay. They may be having, a certain behavior. You want to respond calmly but firmly to emotional outbursts. Help them identify sometimes frightening feelings. So, how did they feel before they were having that outburst? What made them feel that way? Did they, see something that upset them, and how to handle that situation in the future? And you want to let them know that those feelings are okay. And then you want to teach them the new ways of working with those. Here in a little bit, we're going to have a whole presentation based on behaviors and how to handle some of those. Individuals who have been neglected and abused may have never learned that their bodies should be cared for and protected, and they may feel disconnected and at odds with their bodies. And they may see their bodies as vessels of the negative memories and experiences that they carry, a constant reminder not only of what has happened to them, but how little they are worth. So resilience is the ability to recover from traumatic events. In general, individuals who are resilient, they see themselves as capable, as safe, capable, and lovable, see the world and life as manageable, understandable, and meaningful. So some factors that it can increase resilience include a strong relationship with at least one competent, caring adult. You want to have that strong relationship, and they need to make sure that they feel safe. Feeling connected to a positive role model or mentor, having talents or abilities nurtured and appreciated, feeling some control over one's own life, and a sense of belonging to a community, group, or cause larger than oneself. So coping with trauma, this little SOS is kind of a thing to think about when assisting somebody who is having, one of those moments where they're struggling. So you want to plan ahead and help the individual to develop a plan for coping when faced with reminders. So you want to have them stop. You want to take several long, deep breaths, and then you want to orient. So have them take a look around and see the moment that they're in right now, not from their past. And then have them pay attention to what's going on with their body. And then seek help. So, use a stress buster to help calm them down. So that could be even keeping something in their pocket so they can, squeeze and kind of get them back to reality. Or if needed, tell them that they can always call a friend or a family member. Encourage positive behaviors. So much more than that, we focus on the negative behaviors. So when we think of behavior, when we say someone's behavioral, that means that they are exhibiting negative behaviors typically. But behavior is actually good or bad. So you have good behavior and you have bad behavior. So when you are noticing that someone is doing something well, make sure that you're praising them. So you want to catch them in their good moments. And you want to be specific, prompt, and warm when giving those praises. So make sure that you are focusing on those good behaviors. Man, you did really well today. I really loved how you handled that situation. So just making sure that you are giving that positive reinforcement as well. You want to strive for at least 6 praises for every 1 correction. You want to encourage and support the individual's strengths and interests. So offer choices whenever possible. Choices. A lot of people that have experienced trauma, or a lot of our individuals that we support have not been offered choices. So making sure that you are offering those, because that's part of being independent, is making your own choices and decisions. Let others do it themselves. Let them try to do it. So that way they can learn a new skill. Recognize and encourage unique interests and talents. And then again, help them master a skill. Have them have that, that self-worth. And when correcting negative or inappropriate behavior and setting consequences, you want to be calm, clear, and consistent. Consistency is, key. Making sure you're doing it the same way every time. Target one behavior at a time. Someone may have multiple different behaviors, but you want to focus on that one behavior because you don't want to overwhelm them. And you still want to make them, feel good about themselves. So if you're just, constantly getting at them with multiple behaviors, that's not going to make them feel good. And, it's probably going to make those behaviors worse. You want to keep age and emotional age of mind. Exposure to trauma can stunt emotional growth. Help with understanding links between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And help with understanding consequences of behavior that are relevant to them, not you. Help with identifying alternatives to problem and negative behaviors, and encourage practice of techniques for building negative thoughts and runaway emotions. So exposure may cause intrusive, this is just a little overview of everything that we just kind of talked about. Exposure may cause intrusive images, nervousness or jumpiness, difficulty concentrating or taking in information, nightmares or insomnia, emotional numbing, changes in your worldview, feelings of hopelessness or helplessness, anger at society or even at God, feeling disconnected from loved ones. You may respond inappropriately or disproportionately, withdrawn or avoid trauma material. When others' trauma is a reminder, recognize the connection between others' trauma and your own history. Distinguish which feelings belong to the present and the past. Be honest with yourself and others. Take a time out. Seek support. Seek trauma-focused treatment because it's never too late. All right, so some self-care basics. So number 19 was true. And then this is number 20, list at least 3 self-care basics to help staff cope with caring for others who have experienced trauma. So some self-care basics is take care of yourself, getting enough sleep, eat well-balanced meals, which means not on the run, so healthy, good meals. Use alcohol only in moderation, exercise regularly, take regular breaks from stressful activities, laugh every day, spend some time alone. And so here are some examples that you can either help with your consumer or maybe even stuff that you yourself can do to, learn something new or, to have some relaxed time. Take the dog for a walk, play with the cat, exercise, pray, meditate, read a romance novel, write in a journal, chat with neighbors, and breathe deeply. So I know for my self-care that I've just recently learned how to do is gardening. I've always have been fascinated with plants and gardening and all that, but this past year is my first year that I've had like a pretty legit a garden. So at night I go out in my garden and I do some weeding, I look at my plants and just, it soothes me and it relaxes me. So if your consumer is looking for new activities to do, you may need to help them think of stuff. So think outside the box and see what they're interested in and help them learn that. All right. So that is going to complete the first test. Does anybody have any questions over that, or are you missing anything?
Nope, it was perfect.
All right, awesome. All right, so moving on to person-centered planning. So that is PCP. So each of your consumers should have one of these, and before you begin working with your consumers, you will be trained on this. And so before we go forward with the presentation really fast, most of the answers to this test are in order, but some are out of order. So again, if we skip over, a number, we will get back to it. And then, for some reason, if you really did miss it at the end, we'll go through it again too. All right, so person-centered planning. This is a process for planning and supporting a recipient that builds upon the recipient's capacity to engage in activities that promote community life and honors the recipient's preferences, choices, and abilities. Community mental health ensures that a person-centered planning process is used to develop a written individual plan of services in partnership with the recipient. And this involves family, friends, and professionals as desired by the recipient. So, history of traditional services. Like I mentioned to you all earlier, we have come a long way with working with individuals with disabilities. During the 1960s and 1970s, individuals with disabilities were generally cared for in large congregate settings or institutions. Many of the people you provide services to may have lived in an institution. That is number one, institution. So if you are, assisting in, someone who is a little bit older, they may have it in an institution. Many of the institutions closed down years back. So especially some of our younger folks, more than likely we're not in an institution. But that was the common thing to do, was to put your loved one or family member into an institution if they were diagnosed with a disability. I don't know if any of you are familiar with institutions. If you're not, I highly recommend that you do some research on it, just because I'm a huge history buff, and I think it's important to realize how far we have come with working with individuals. So like I mentioned before, my aunts, they were both born with cerebral palsy and a few other issues. They are 4 years apart, so they were not twins. My first aunt was born in 1956, and then the second one was born in 1960. When my Aunt Pat, who was the first one born in 1956, as soon as she was born, the doctors knew that something was not quite right, that she was going to have some type of disability. She wasn't diagnosed with cerebral palsy until a little bit later. But right at birth, while my grandma was in the hospital, the doctor recommended that she placed my aunt into an institution. The doctor said that they would be able to provide better care for her. And then she would also be with other people with disabilities too. So she would be with people just like her. My grandma refused. So she decided that she was going to take care of my aunt at home. And then when my second aunt was born in 1960, the doctor was like, okay, after a few months, they knew that my aunt Karen was going to have some kind of disability and would not be able to live a quote unquote normal life. So they were like, okay, now you have two kids with disabilities, you need to place them in an institution. My grandma said no. So thankfully my aunts did not go to an institution. They were raised at home, and as a normal life as you could in the 60s and 70s. They were not able to receive a normal education. They cannot just go to a public school. So they faced many challenges during that time. They did not have the same things that, are available now to people with disabilities. Institutions, again, if you haven't, learned much about them, do some research through some awesome videos. I shouldn't say awesome videos, but very educational videos online. I got to go to the Traverse City State Institution or State Hospital. It's free to walk the grounds. You do have to pay to take a tour, but I did take the tour. And I did learn a lot there. The tour made it not sound like a bad place, but I personally knew some people that were in there and they did experience trauma because there were a lot of staff. There wasn't a lot of supervision. There was a lot of abuse that went on in behind closed doors there. And a lot of the institutions, there was not a big enough space. And again, not enough staff to help provide personal care to individuals. So when it came time for showering, a lot of individuals were hosed down instead of actually, properly cared for. They did not grow up knowing what love meant. So even physical touch, like just building those relationships. And when I started working in AFC homes, out of my 6 residents, 4 of them were institutionalized as children, and the AFC home that I was at was their first real home. So I was able to witness a lot of amazing things happening, to teach them a lot of amazing skills, and for the first time show them what really, unconditional love is, all that type. So a lot of our individuals that you may be supporting may not have been in an institution, but if they have, make sure you do the research so that way, because that could explain some of their behaviors and may have been through some of the trauma in the past. So the 1996 revisions of the Mental Health Code require a person-centered approach to planning, selection, and delivery of the support, services, and treatment you receive from the public mental health system. The person-centered planning is a process of learning how a person wants to live, to have a set plan in place to support, not control or solve their problems. So this plan is not to control them. This plan is based off of them and what they want to do. Number 2, self-determination is a natural progression of person-centered planning, and it assures people with developmental disabilities and or mental illness the authority to make meaningful choices and to control one's own life. So again, number 2 is self-determination. All right, the guiding principles of person-centered planning. This is number 3. You just have to list 3 of them. The person's desired future will become the framework of all planning. The most important part of the process is the dreams, desires, and preferences of the individual. So the person that you are supporting, that is the most important part of that plan and what needs to be in there. Planning will begin with input from the individual. So what they want to do, what they want to work on, it's the individual. It's their plan, so it should be based on them, on what they want. Planning will also be decided by and included additional information from the people most important to the individual and as appropriate information from professionals. A pre-planning process will be used. The plan of service begins with what the individual can do for him or herself. It then adds resources and support from family, neighbors, friends, and other community resources. So planning activities will address issues and concerns which the individual or others may have about health, welfare, and safety. Person-centered plans will change anytime the person's needs, desires, and circumstances change. And a person-centered approach will seek feedback from the individual on a regular basis regarding their interests and needs. So if we do ever have to make any changes to the plan, that is considered an addendum. And when there is an addendum made, that means the plan has changed, and you will need to be trained on that new plan. So staff's role in implementing the PCP. So we are going to skip ahead to number 5. Most importantly, the DSP is responsible for implementing the PCP. So that is why you all are there, is to work on their goals and objectives from the person-centered plan. You must know where each individual's record is kept, read and be familiar with the PCP, and work with the lead staff or care coordinator and other DSPs in the home to provide necessary services and supports identified in that PCP. You must read through the PCP and sign off on the training log before working with any individual. And then the role of the DSP in the pre-planning process is to gather information about the person's likes or dislikes, wants, needs, hopes, dreams, and desires, and that is number 6. Some people with disabilities may use non-traditional methods of communication, which will be accommodated. And then when an individual cannot speak for him or herself, it's important for the DSP to spend more time observing activities in the home. So on this one, it is 6 and 7 are the answers. And so some common questions that may be asked prior to PCP, so questions that would be asked to the individual is, what are their religious preferences? So what type of religion do they practice, if they practice any at all, or if they wish to? Any special interest in cultural or ethnic groups? What is their preferred communication or language preference? What is their preferred living situation? Do they want roommates? Do they have a favorite staff, or do they even want staff? And then what do they do through their day? So list of different activities that they do in their spare time. Community inclusion. So where do they like to go to get, where do they like to go out into the community? And then some goals, short-term versus long-term goals. And then what are some of their health and safety concerns? And then who is their consumer support team? So as friends, family, guardian, staff, etc. All right. So planning the PCP goals. This is number 4. List 4 things that should occur with the meeting planning process. So that there's 2 slides to this. So the first three are in here, and then the answer will be on the next one. So the meeting time and place to consider the person's desire and maximize participation by individuals important to that person. Remember, the person is the focal point of the planning process. So any comments, questions, and statements are to be addressed to that person, whether or not the person verbally communicates. So even if somebody is not, verbal, so they can't physically talk to you, does not mean that they cannot understand you. So if you're talking about them, make sure you are talking directly to them. Don't, look away from them. The person's input is held as primary, and all other participants act as consultants and advisors rather than decision makers. And again, here's some more for number 4. The language used in the meeting should be clearly understood by all and is kept positive. These plans aren't meant to bash the person. We want to keep them positive and use positive language throughout the whole thing. The individual has all the information needed to make choices and has time to communicate them. And the focus of planning is on the dreams and desires of the person. So the meeting belongs to the person who decides the following with the help of the support circle, and this is number 8.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
Can we go back to like 2 slides? I didn't get the 3rd one.
This one? Or do you need this one?
Yeah, because
Okay.
I didn't, it was just too quick.
Sorry.
And then for like the fourth one, it's just one of the other ones.
Yep, yep.
Okay, I'll just read it real quick and then you can move on.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so this is number 8. The meeting belongs to the person who decides the following with the help of the support circle. So the outcome of the meeting, who they want to invite. So usually the consumer will invite, the important people in that person's life. So usually it's like the guardian, the case manager, maybe staff, friends, anyone that's, pretty close that can help them plan the meeting. So what to discuss. So they plan on, what they want to discuss. And they decide when and where to hold the meeting. And this can be in an informal and comfortable setting. I've been invited to PCP meetings that were held at McDonald's. One of my individuals loved McDonald's and that was his comfort place. So when he was there, he was very comfortable, and especially he got very anxious in very formal settings. So like going to an office to have a meeting, he just was not comfortable. But man, that man was in all of his glory at McDonald's. He loved his cheeseburgers. And then who should facilitate? So if the person wants to facilitate, he or she can identify a co-facilitator to assist them. All right, the meeting should share information, discuss wants, wishes, and dreams as identified during the pre-planning process and involve future planning. The person's support plan will include the futures statement, and that is number 9, the futures statement. Each desired outcome will require documentation. The documentation is reviewed and evaluated, and adjustments are made to the plan accordingly. And this is number 10, your documentation has a direct effect on the evaluation process, and without accurate documentation, the adjustments may not be right for the individual's progress and or safety. So the documentation that you are providing, so like all the CLS notes that you'll have to put in at the end of your shift, that's why that's so important. So kind of like how I mentioned when I was talking about the IR, any type of documentation that you are writing down, whoever is reading that more than likely was not there with you for those situations. So when you are documenting on the person's CLS goal, you're documenting on if they're succeeding. And if they're not succeeding, there may need to be a change to the plan, or maybe they have already completed that goal and they need to start working on something else. That's why that documentation is important. The case managers and other individuals will be reading that to help support that individual. We constantly need to change plans to better meet the goals of each individual. So plans may be changed as goals are met. All right. So did everybody get 1 through 10?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. So number 11, person-centered planning means to have a set plan in place to help people solve their problems. That is false. It's not there to help solve their problems. It's there to help them succeed and work on certain tasks, but it's not going to solve every single problem in their life. The person who receives services is the one who decides who will attend the person-centered planning meeting. That is true. Number 13, if a direct support professional is invited to attend a person-centered planning meeting, they should respect the person's choice and give input when requested. Focus on the person's strengths and abilities. Support the person's dreams and desires for their future. So that's D, all the above. Sorry, I just got busy reading. Number 14, the individual plan of service and the person-centered plan are the same. That is true. Number 15, self-determination is a natural progression of person-centered planning. That is true. Number 16, the direct support professional's most important responsibility in the person-centered planning process is to take at least 30 minutes each day to implement the plan. That is false. Your job is to work on the plan your entire shift. That is why you are hired, is to help them work on their goals. Number 17, direct support professionals must know where each person's record is kept, be familiar with the individual plan of service for each person, and work as a team with the home manager and other direct support professionals to provide necessary services identified in each person's plan. That is true. Number 18, the pre-planning process for person-centered planning is important because of D, which is A and B. Again, it's not all of the above because it does not take care of all the person's problems. Number 19, the direct support professional is an important part of the person-centered planning process. That is true. And offering choices is one of the most important things you can do as a direct support professional. That is true.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
On number 3, I was muted, so I couldn't talk.
Oh, that's okay.
I need one more.
Want to tell me what you have?
I have the person's desired future will become framework for all planning.
Okay.
And planning will begin with input from the individual.
All right, so go ahead and say net planning process.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else? All right. So, forward my list go.
So that fills out both of my tests for the respite care. Is that, am I finished?
Yep, I was just about to, I was looking for my sheet because I knew that there was one respite. So yes, you are free to go. Just make sure that you clock out when you leave, and then make sure you get those in the mail as soon as possible. So try and get them in the mail today so you don't forget about it, or first thing tomorrow. And then make sure that you sign this sheet too. And for everybody else, I will sign this bottom thing. So you just sign your name, and once it gets to me, I'll sign it. So it was very nice meeting you.
Okay, great. Yeah, nice to meet you too. Thank you so much.
Yep, and so welcome to CHS. Everyone else stay on. But Casimira, nice to meet you, and have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so for the rest of you, we are just gonna go over one more PowerPoint, and then we're gonna take a short little break. This one, I'm gonna go over it quickly, because I'm sure you guys are probably itching to stop listening to me talk for a minute and take a break. Oh, where did it go? So I'm just gonna, this one takes about 10, maybe 15 minutes at the most. And it's just kind of the gist of being a DSP and what is expected of you, and what some of your roles are gonna be. Again, each location is a little bit different for what is it to be expected, but. So a direct support professional, or a DSP, they work with and support individuals in their own home and out in the community. And they have many important roles to play. So you could be a partner, a teacher, ambassador, an advocate, or a supporter. Say a partner is supporting individuals in leading independent lives and participating in and contributing to the community. A teacher is finding creative and fun ways to help individuals learn meaningful skills and provide them with information to make the best choices for themselves. An ambassador is encouraging others in the individual's community to support those with developmental disabilities as neighbors, friends, and coworkers. And an advocate, supporting individuals in exercising their rights and responsibilities. And a supporter, seeking to understand the likes, dislikes, hopes, and dreams of individuals you support, and cheering individuals on as they make progress towards their life goals. And let me tell you, from just doing many years of DSP work, this is definitely one of the best jobs I think I've ever had. I just loved watching somebody achieve their goals, and it was just the highlight, of my day. And as a DSP, you probably will have some hard days, but those good days are going to trump those hard days. Choice. So service and support should always be based on the individual and their needs and preferences. Individuals with help from parents, legal guardians, or conservators when needed should take part in decisions about their own lives, such as where and with whom they live, where they work, their relationship with others, the way in which they spend their time, and their goals for the future. So I love to share one of my favorite stories with one of the individuals I helped. So he was fairly independent. He was able to ambulate on his own. But for some reason, especially when people lived in AFCs, again, come a long way with working with individuals. I will say that 100 more times throughout this PowerPoint. But a lot of times when people were being taken care of, they were being taken care of. They weren't living, they weren't making their own choices. And that's how we thought we were supposed to work with individuals like that, or like that with disabilities. So one of my gentlemen, I got really close with him. When I first started working with him, he went through a very hard time in his life. He was very depressed. He barely ever came out of his room. And so that really made me sad, just seeing him just locked up in his room all the time, not communicating with anybody, not doing anything. He was just mainly sleeping. So I tried to, over the first couple months of working with him, I really got to know him and tried to figure out what he really liked. One of the things I found out that he liked was scary movies. I did not know, because I never saw him watching movies. And when I asked him, what movie do you want to go to? We went and saw that, can't remember what it was called, but it's the Catacombs in Paris. It's a very scary movie. I jumped watching it. I was a little hesitant at taking him to that because I wasn't sure how he would react, because I didn't know him very well. And, sometimes scary movies aren't the best to see because it can be traumatizing and, it can just be scary. Well, that was our first bond. I was the first person to really take him to go see that. I was learning to get to know him. So fast forward a couple more years, once I became a supervisor of the area, he used to sit in my office with me all the time. He was kind of like my little assistant. And he always saw me on the phone. And one day he goes, I've never called anybody on the phone. And I looked at him, I'm like, what, dude? You never called anybody? You're in your 50s. How have you never used the phone before? And he's like, well, no one's ever really showed me, and I've never had the opportunity to. So it just so happened that week was his PCP. We made that his goal to work on learning how to work a phone. And one of his first calls that he made was a Domino's pizza, because he loved, he thought it was so cool that you could call the pizza place and it could get delivered right to your home. You could eat your pizza in your pajamas. So he was super excited. I helped him through that call. We put him on speakerphone. And before he started talking, I just let the gentleman at Domino's know, like, hey, this is so-and-so. This is his first time ever ordering a pizza on the phone. And this is also his first time ever dialing and talking to somebody on the phone. And, I did have to help him a little bit through the order. And thankfully, the Domino's person was very, very nice. When the pizza got dropped off, we opened up the box and they wrote a note inside of the box. They're like, so-and-so, great job. We can't wait to get more orders for you. I almost started crying when I saw that, because that gave him that, that satisfaction, like, hey, I did something well and I did it well. So after that, he just learned to work a phone. It didn't take very long, we had a phone that had big numbers that he could dial, and it was just so cool to watch him do something, that he's never done before, and he was so excited to do it. So you, as DSPs, will hopefully get to experience moments like that where you worked on certain tasks that are simple tasks that we take for granted. Hopefully you will be able to help those individuals learn new skills and hopefully feel the same happiness that I felt. So individuals should have a chance to be involved in the life of their community in the same ways as their neighbors, friends, and fellow community members. So just because they have a disability doesn't mean that they should not be involved in the community. Services should be provided in the home and community settings where individuals live and work whenever possible. And cultural differences should always be honored, and individuals should be comfortable where they live, have privacy when they need it, and should have a say in every aspect of their lives. So whether you are working independently or with a team, you will develop some basic skills and knowledge to help you successfully meet the daily challenges of your job. And many situations in this work will call for using several skills at the same time. So ethics, this is to guide you in promoting the individual's physical well-being by identifying the illness and ensuring timely medical treatment with dignity and respect. Observation, by using your senses to identify changes that may be signs and symptoms of illness. Communication, to ask questions about someone's pain, such as how long has it hurt you? Decision making, to decide how to respond to the situation based on what you have observed. And documentation, to record information about the illness in individual staff communication log and on the information sheet. So CLS, this stands for Community Living Support. This is face-to-face services used to increase and maintain personal self-sufficiency, independence, participation, and productivity. CLS may be provided in the consumer's home or in their community. And again, this is doing tasks with, not for. And as CLS notes, monitors the progress of a consumer and tracks achievements of the goals that they set with CMH. So here are some keywords that can be used while documenting. So if you've never had a document before, I know it can be a little intimidating, but some of these keywords should be in the binder, and you should be using these to describe how you worked on that goal. So if you do need help with documentation, do not hesitate to reach out. So staff must always follow the person-centered plan goals and objectives, because again, that is what you are documenting on, are those specific goals. And it must be descriptive on the staff's level of prompting as well as the consumer's level of completion. And these records are reviewed closely by CMH to assure that the service provided by staff is truly a billable service. So your documentation is essentially how you are getting paid, because you are showing proof that you are needed to support that individual and that you are there working on that individual's goals. Medicaid covered services require documentation that indicates a medical necessity for a service. So here's an example of a well-written progress note. Most of you will be using and putting your CLS progress notes on the app. So Jack was verbally prompted to take his dirty clothes from his bedroom to the sink. Jack required multiple verbal prompts throughout the day to complete this task. Jack took his dirty clothes to the hamper after he got out of the shower. I provided verbal praise and encouragement to keep up the good work. I observed Jack as he placed a load of dark clothes into the washer. I monitored Jack to ensure that he used the right amount of laundry soap and turned the washer on. He required verbal prompting to make sure that he did not overfill the washer with clothes. And when his clothes were dry, I verbally prompted Jack to fold and or hang them on the hangers, and then he put them away. He needed verbal prompting to stay on task today. So in this note, the staff documented on how they encouraged that consumer to work on goals. And if they succeeded, they thoroughly explained the steps that they did to helping that individual reach their goal. So other documentation, again, this is home specific, so it could be different in each location, but some of the other documentations could include duty lists or staff chores, medication treatment sheets, adult home help or chore service logs, physician orders, pertinent health history. So a little bit of background on certain disabilities. So developmental disabled, this means that the person can learn slowly. They think about things in more real life or concrete ways. They may not understand jokes. They think of more like solid ways of thinking. They have a hard time using what is learned in a new situation. They may have cerebral palsy, poor balance and an unusual walk, poor motor coordination. They may have autism, so this is generally has a difficult time learning social skills, may repeat words and or body movements. They may have epilepsy, they may have seizures, may become unconscious, movement or actions may change for a short time. Individuals with mental illness. The Michigan Mental Health Code defines mental illness as a substantial disorder or thought or mood which significantly impairs judgment, capacity to recognize reality, or the ability to cope with the ordinary demands of life. For a mental or emotional problem to be considered a mental illness, it has to be a major problem that greatly interferes with the person's ability to function in life. A definition of serious mental illness is a functional impairment which substantially interferes or limits one or more life activities. So there's three types, or not three types, there's many types of mental illness. I'm ready for a break too, I've been talking a lot. Psychosis, so people see and hear things that are not real to anyone else. They may have a strange feeling or odd behavior. Someone who has schizophrenia, they believe things that are obviously false, seeing or hearing things which do not exist. And they may have disconnected speech. Someone who has a mood disorder may express depression or have mania, and a combination of both is bipolar disorder. Anxiety disorder, I feel like a lot of us are very familiar with, the term anxiety. This is an unreasonable fear, tensions, or anxiety of places, people, objects, and other things. Panic attacks, overeating, sleepwalking, or constant hand washing, which can indicate neurosis. Some people do have very severe anxiety where it can, basically not threaten their life. Now I can't even think of words to say. Personality disorder, rigid and ongoing patterns of thought and actions, inflexible behavior patterns that often cause serious personal and social difficulties, and a general function impairment. And this results from early childhood patterns which shape a person in certain ways. So people with a mental illness, they still have dreams, hopes, feelings, experiences, wants, and needs just like everybody else. And again, we know more about mental illness today, but I still believe that we have a long way to go. But we do have better treatment options for people, especially, compared to the past. The biggest challenge faced by people with mental illness is often the myths and understandings the general public has about what it means to have a mental illness, especially because physically you usually cannot tell that somebody has a mental illness. So it's, an invisible disorder. You don't know if somebody has that. So there are a lot of myths about that. So while it's important to learn about the names and the different conditions, you have to remember that these people are people first. So a good way to ensure that you're using people first language is to begin describing people with words such as individual, person, man, or woman. It's not enough to use people first language to show respect for individuals. You must also take the time to learn about them, about their needs, their strengths, their wants. You do not assume that you know what is best, and your manner of supporting individuals reflects their needs and preferences. So the old rule was the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated. The new rule is the platinum rule. You want to treat others as they want to be treated. Because remember, how you may want to be treated may not be how they want to be treated. You want to treat them how they want to be treated. So beginning your shift, you always want to greet people who live in the home positively. So you always want to keep a smile on your face. Doesn't matter what happened in your personal life. As soon as you're walking in to take care of your consumer, you want to be positive. You want to be smiling. Before the staff you are replacing leaves, always visually check on all the people who are in the home and find out where anyone else is and when they're expected to come home. So once you show up to work and you're clocked in, you are now in direct care of that consumer. So you want to make sure that they're home and you want to know where their whereabouts are. Always read the staff communication book at the start of your shift. If you haven't been there for a couple days, make sure you catch up and read up on that. Ask the staff that are leaving if there are any special instructions or information that might not have been in the log. During your shift, again, always know where your consumer is at. Follow the BCP. Remember that there are some people that you could help get in trouble in a hurry. So for example, if someone's unsteady, don't leave them in the bathroom by themselves. Never leave keys laying around. Documentation is your best friend. If it's not written down, it never happened. And then just an overview of what you may be doing on your shift, providing supervision or doing bed checks, providing personal care or giving showers, passing medications, general duties or deep cleaning, laundry, meal prepper, cooking, documenting in programs, so working on different programs that the individual may have and then documenting in them, doing activities or taking them out into the community, and then medical appointments. Oh. So an overview to positive behavior support. It is important to understand that behavior is a form of communication. Some people are verbal and can tell us what they are thinking, and some are nonverbal and they use certain behaviors or body language to communicate what they are thinking or how they are feeling. So if you don't have any experience working with somebody who is nonverbal, again, they cannot verbally communicate how they're feeling, so they can't tell you. But they can sure show you, and once you build that relationship with them and they get to, you get to know them, you'll be able to definitely understand them. And they will show you how they communicate. So number one, your role as a direct support professional is to support people, not to control what they do. So if you guys haven't gotten anything out of this training today, I think this has been brought up numerous times. Your job is to support, not to control. You're trying to get them, you're not there to be a parent or to restrict them with anything. You are there to support them. So they are able to, make their own choices. And even if they are having a bad behavior, you are there to support them. So behavior can be imitated. How you interact with your coworker can have an impact on a positive environment. It's important to keep this in mind as you learn more about your work environment and interacting with others. Every day, life can have an impact on a person's behavior, so creating a positive environment that respects and values individual preferences and choices will not only make the individuals you work with happier, it will make your job of supporting them easier. So, just keep remembering that you are a role model for these folks. And when you come into work, you need to come in with a positive attitude. It doesn't matter what was happening before you came into work. When you come into work, you're getting paid, and you are getting paid to provide that support for those individuals. So try and always come in with the best attitude that you can. Nobody likes a Debbie Downer. Praise to reinforce. Praise is what we do to make it more likely that an individual will want to do the task again. Handshakes, an arm around the shoulder, high fives, smiles, and laughs are all rewarding. And you, as the staff member, you are the ultimate reward. Praise is genuine and has the most impact when delivered with enthusiasm. The more we can praise good behavior, the less the person will want to get our attention by doing a challenging behavior. So a lot of times, the individuals will have a negative behavior to get your attention. And so the more that we can praise that good behavior, the more they will want to do that good behavior, and they will show more signs of having that good behavior. Number 2, list the 8 guidelines for effective teaching. So the next 3 slides are going to have these 8 guidelines. So you just need to write the number, the bolded part. So the first one is plan. You want to know their daily routine and PCP goals, have materials available, and break down the task into smaller steps. The second one is build with variety and choice. Have giving them, the different choices of what they want to do throughout the day. If they need to work on household chores, when they want to do their personal care, so when they want to take a shower, any grooming that they may need to do, and then any social activities. Prevent mistakes before they happen. So have the task set up and ready to go ahead of time. Prepare a good learning environment for the person. And then again, with preventing mistakes before they happen, that's where it's a good idea to break the task into smaller steps. So that way, when you're working on it, you can work on one thing at a time, and then they can kind of see what's going on. So an example of that is, we know how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We can do that without having the steps written down. So if you are teaching somebody how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, someone that has never done it before, when you sit down and actually list the different steps involved in making that, there's there could be potentially over 20 different steps for that. So for example, one step would be getting out the bread, untwisting the bread tie, getting out, actually opening the bag, getting the bread out from the bag, getting the knife to spread the peanut butter and to get the jelly, get the peanut butter, get the jelly. So, there's lots of steps. And when you're teaching somebody how to do a new task, it might be more effective to break it down to smaller steps. Make the teaching experience successful. You want to start with something that that person can do. You want to give them that fulfillment of knowing that they can do something. You want to encourage participation, so don't wait too long for them to get it right. And remember, any response is participation, negative or positive, and be sure to praise. A 5th guideline is provide prompts when necessary. Prompts are done by the teacher as assisting techniques to help the person to perform the task correctly. There are different levels of prompts that can be used depending on the person's current abilities. That can be demonstration, independent, verbal, physical, gestural, or refusal. The 6th guideline is praise before, during, and after the teaching session. You want to praise for any and all attempts to do the task, even if you have to assist the person or do the task with them. Always praise the person after the teaching session is over. You always want to give that praise and that encouragement. Keep the flow going. Once the task is ready to go, keep it flowing, helping the person if needed. And then make adjustments as needed to keep things going smoothly. The 8th guideline is be aware of what is going on during the teaching session. If the person is having a hard time, you may need to assist with more prompts. You may need to break the task down into smaller steps. So just like, initially what we were talking about breaking them down. So especially if the person is struggling with something, you may need to start, breaking it down. Look for progress, even in small amounts, and reward it. As the person improves, start adding more difficult tasks or new steps. Talk about progress with your coworkers, and remember, focus on the person more than the task. All right, behavior. Number 3, the 3 blanks in here. Behaviors are a form of communication people use to tell us their wants, needs, and feelings. All of us have behaviors. Behaviors do not happen without reason. All behavior is intended to communicate something, and by listening to what the behavior is saying, we may be able to discover the reason why the behavior is happening. There are always reasons for behavior, even if we do not know those reasons right now. So what makes a behavior challenging? Behavior can be considered challenging when it affects an individual's life in a negative way, or the behavior has a big impact on how others relate to them. Behavior is usually considered challenging if it causes harm to the individual or others, causes property damage, prevents the person from learning new skills, causes the person to be labeled as a behavior problem, prevents the person from participating in social and recreational activities. So a few causes of challenging behaviors. If somebody's scared, they may exhibit some behaviors, just kind of like when we were talking about trauma. A lot of times when the individual gets scared or sees that traumatic event, they get scared and they can get frustrated and they can exhibit those behaviors. Obviously, if the person is frustrated, they could have some challenging behaviors. It could be physical. Maybe they have they're in some kind of pain, or maybe it could be their disability. One of the folks I used to take care of, he was able to ambulate all on his own. He did use a walker, but over time, unfortunately, he started falling more. He was losing strength in his legs. So he's becoming very weak, so he had to start using a wheelchair. He had a very difficult time with that because once he started using the wheelchair, he needed to ask for assistance for everything. And he was used to being, fairly independent where he didn't need help using the bathroom. So before, he never used to have to ask help to use the bathroom. Now he needed help to use the bathroom. And, for someone to go their whole life with never needing assistance with that to all of a sudden needing full-on support, that can make you frustrated. And for months, he was exhibiting these awful behaviors. He was hitting at staff. He threw a bowl at me one day out of the blue, and he used to be the nicest guy. And after we finally figured out, like, okay, this is when these behaviors started happening, it's right around the time that he went into a wheelchair. And so after that, we started learning how to approach him differently. We started chatting with him, like reassuring him constantly, that, it's okay that you're in a wheelchair, but you can't act that way. And just letting him, just constantly giving him lots of encouragement, especially when he had those good behaviors. And then obviously if they're angry, they can have challenging behaviors. Once it has been determined that a behavior is challenging, one of your roles is to observe and try to come up with ideas on what is making the challenging behavior work so well for the individual. Staff members should be working together with the person-centered planning team to determine why the behavior is happening and think of a way to teach more socially appropriate alternatives or replacement behaviors. And that is number 4, replacement behaviors. Most of the time, people who display challenging behaviors usually give us some kind of warning that the challenging behavior is going to happen. And this is number 5. Antecedent and precursors are both signs that can happen before a challenging behavior occurs. An antecedent is a minor sign that has something to do with the person's environment. They may or may not be easy to see happen. So an example of this is an individual we work with is afraid of thunderstorms. It is getting dark and starting to thunder. The actual thunder may be an antecedent to the challenging behavior of them starting to hit themselves or strike out at those around them. A precursor are minor signs coming from the individual themselves, indicating there may be a change in the person's mood. They may or may not be easy to see happen. An example of this is if an individual is swearing, the swearing may be a precursor to a challenging behavior, such as throwing an object at someone. It is not always what we say to someone, but how we say it that determines what kind of message we are giving to the person and how they will respond back to us. So this is really good information. So make sure you pay attention to this, because this is a perfect example of how you talk to somebody, how you communicate with somebody. The tone of voice we use when we say something to someone represents 38% of communication. So remember, communication is understanding and ensuring that you are understood. The body language we use represents 55% of communication, but the actual words we use only represents 7% of communication. So the tone of voice we use along with the way we express ourselves through body movements has a big impact on the message we are trying to deliver. If we want the person to get the right message, we need to make sure our tone of voice and body language match what we are trying to say. So just kind of earlier, how we talked about, how we talk to people and to be cautious and not to let our frustration show on the consumer. So especially if you are at work and let's say the consumer is having a behavior, you need to make sure that you are expressing yourself appropriately, because if you start raising your voice at the consumer, or you have your body posture is just showing that you are frustrated, that is not going to help the situation. You want to make sure that you are trying to speak calmly, that you are kind of remaining at not like a super relaxed, body language, but if you're yelling back at them, that's not going to help the situation whatsoever. And your job is to support them. And it's not to make the situation any worse, because you are there for a reason. So here's how you can promote some positive behavior. And this is number 6, list at least 3 key points about promoting positive behavior. So what individuals are doing, where, and with who affects their behavior. Behaviors are strategies individuals use to get their needs met. Environment can influence someone's behavior, so where they are. All behavior is communication, good or bad. How you make a request or respond to an individual can decrease the chances of a challenging behavior occurring. All right, so these next couple slides are going to go with number 7, which is the matching. We're going to go through these together. Change your energy level is G, as in good. How the teacher is interacting with the learner may have an influence on their response, increasing or decreasing your level of enthusiasm, and how rewards and prompts are delivered may increase or decrease participation. Modify your tone is A, as in apple. We may have to raise or lower the tone of voice to a level the learner recognizes as friendly, encouraging, and supportive. Validate the learner's feeling is J, as in jelly. Teacher listens to the learner and acknowledges how they are feeling. The teacher listens and responds to the learner, but they continue to carry on with the task. Improve and vary praising is F as in Frank. The learner may not be responding to the praise the teacher is using. Change your expectations is D as in dog. The teacher decides that the learner needs a break from the activity, so totally get away from the task for a brief period of time. Sometimes you just need to stop doing what you're doing and take that break. Abandon the task to focus on the person is a B as in boy. There may be a time where it is better for the teacher just to forget the task and just hang out with that learner. So kind of like taking that break. Change the pace of the activity is H as in house. Moving too quickly to complete a task or too slow may affect the learning process. Involve choice is I. Teachers need to provide as many choices as possible during the teaching session. And then modify the environment is C. There may be distractions in the area such as light, temperature, other people, etc. that may require staff to make changes for the learner. Improve the prompts is K, helping the person to complete the portions of the task that they are given them. Take a mini break is M as in mom. The teacher decides to stop the teaching session. The learner's challenging behavior has not started to decrease, so the teacher decides that it is not a good time to do the task. Bail out is L. Teacher stays with the learner no matter what. The teacher helps them through the difficulty, tries to get the learner to start focusing again and show some participation. Hang in there is E. The learner is not responding well to the teacher's directions or rewards, and the teacher may need to adjust their teaching methods to meet the learner's needs today. All right, did you guys get all the matching? Perfect. Confrontation avoidance techniques, or CAT. This is number 8. List at least 4 things you should always do when using confrontation avoidance techniques. That is, praise good behavior as much as possible. Praise, 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 praise. Show care and concern daily, not just when the person becomes upset. Be fair, sometimes firm, and be consistent. Consistency is key. Get to know the person you provide services to. So building that relationship with them, you want them to get them to trust you. You want to trust them. And the more you build that relationship, the more that you'll be able to help them. Look out for and avoid events or situations that may upset the person, and stay in control of yourself. So what to do when agitation is just beginning? This is number 9. You're going to list 5 things. There's 2 PowerPoints for this one. So on this specific slide, there's only 4, but the next slide will have more of them on there. So you want to approach immediately and talk to the person to find out what's going on. So this is when you notice that someone, you can just kind of see that someone's starting to get upset, but they're not full-blown upset. So you want to go up to them and just be like, hey, what's going on? Like, why are you so upset? You're going to remain calm and friendly. So you're still going to talk in that positive attitude, keep that positive attitude, talk in that calm tone of voice. Again, remember that your tone of voice is one of the most effective ways of communication. Invite the person to sit with you or stand with the person if they refuse to sit. So you want to remain at eye contact. So keeping that eye contact with that person is going to get them to focus on you. Speak in a low voice, calm, slowly, and clearly. Again, this is where you're going to be aware of your voice tone. Ask what the problem is. Simply sometimes just asking them will get them to talk, and then you can try and figure out a solution to why they are upset. Do not demand, command, argue, disagree, or make threats. So just remember, when you're upset with someone and someone's sitting there yelling at you and demanding you to do something, that's the last thing that you want to hear is them telling you to do something. So make sure that you don't demand or you don't want to sound like an overindulgent parent. Remember, these are the beginning signs of agitation. So this is just the first time that you're noticing that that person's upset. So you're trying to de-escalate that situation. So getting emotional or bossy could make the situation worse. And do not bribe or promise what you cannot deliver. And be patient. Time is on your side. So what to do when agitation is increasing? And this is number 10. You want to list at least 7 things to do. Again, there's 2 slides for this. You're going to continue to speak in a calm, relaxed voice at a low volume. You're going to show no emotion. Continue to talk to the person, listen to them, and wait for them to respond and start calming down. That is a key, is actually, talking to the person, listening to what they have to say, and then, waiting for them to respond to start calming down. So sometimes just even getting them to talk, and by you listening to how they're feeling, that can get their feelings out and it can get them to calm down. Again, you're going to continue to be patient. Acknowledge how they feel. We all have emotions, good and bad. We all have been upset. So it's okay to be upset, but we can help them understand that there's different ways to express, or how to come up with a solution. You don't ever want to turn your back or walk away, because that can put yourself in a serious situation. You can get yourself injured. Do not disagree, argue, command, demand, or make threats. You're going to continue to be patient and do not give up working on these techniques unless you are scared and know the person will continue to escalate to the point of attacking someone. You want to keep your body posture relaxed and stand at an arm's length plus a few inches away from the person. Never corner the person, and do not allow yourself to be cornered. Because again, you never want to restrict their movement. If they want to leave the room, they should be able to. And you don't want to get yourself cornered because you don't want to get yourself hurt. Confrontation avoidance techniques are considered standard practice unless the person's individual plan of service has a behavior treatment plan in it. If a person has an ongoing treatment plan to assist with their challenging behavior, you need to do exactly what the plan tells you to do. So if someone has a behavior treatment plan, it's just like a person-centered plan. You have to follow the different things in that plan, and you have to be consistent with it. The staff member that has the best relationship with the person usually has the most success with helping them calm down. And that is number 11. The staff who has the best relationship. So ways to support an individual who has a challenging behavior: getting to know the person. Remember that all behavior is a form of communication, good or bad. Try to include the person in the planning process as much as possible. Stay focused on the person's strengths and abilities. Every person can make improvement with the adequate support. So focusing on those strengths and abilities, it's going to give that person a sense of worth. It's never nice. It's never good to hear all the negative things that is going on with them, because you want them to develop that positive identity. Give choices rather than requiring or demanding the person to do something. And then help the person to have more fun. So this is number 16. Kind of skip it over a little bit. But number 16, helping individuals to have fun can be one way to support with their challenging behavior. Fun and humor are powerful cures for problems. Staff should be a role model for having fun and being happy. So that is role model. So positive behavior support plans, you're going to develop a support team. The support team should include key people in the person's life. The team will meet to share information about everything they know about that person. The meeting should be positive and everyone needs to agree to the plan. The team should discuss the person's strengths and abilities. So this is number 12, strengths and abilities, and be able to help put together a plan that will promote a positive future for the person based on those strengths and abilities. So number 12, all the blanks are strengths and abilities. Begin the process of a comprehensive assessment. As a staff member, you will be asked to describe how the person spends their time. Everyone should take note of the overall quality of life for the person. It is important to remember that quality of life issues are among the most important factors that influence behavior. So that is number 13, quality of life. If someone's quality of life isn't what it could be, it can affect their behavior. So when I think of quality of life, I think of a good, basically like a good home. What's important to me is, having family around to feel safe. So if you are not feeling safe, you are going to have some behaviors more than likely. So if someone's quality of life isn't what it could be, you are more than likely going to see some bad behaviors coming from them. Conduct a functional assessment. Once all the necessary information is gathered and discussed, it is time to conduct a functional assessment of the challenging behavior the person is doing. So how do we figure out the purpose of function of a behavior? We start with the A, B, and C. Antecedent occurs before the behavior. Behavior to the specific challenging behavior that can be clearly seen when it occurs. And consequence refers to what happens after the challenging behavior or as a result of the behavior. Positive behavior support plans. Continue to gather information to evaluate what is going on. The information about the person's challenging behavior needs to be evaluated regularly. The steps that have been taken to help the person should be a positive impact on the behavior and the overall quality of the person's life. As information is reviewed, it should focus on overall improvements in the person's life and not whether the challenging behavior ever occurs. Design a support plan based on the data collected, which should indicate what the team thinks the purpose or function of the behavior is. The plan needs to address the changes needed to reduce the amount of times the challenging behavior happens. The plan also needs to include what to do when the person has a bad day and the challenging behavior increases. The positive support plan is considered treatment, that is number 14, treatment, and is part of the individual's person-centered plan of service. All staff are required to follow the plan and be consistent with how they implement the plan. Regular reviews of the plan should occur, and a positive support plan is not written in stone. Staff need to be sure to chart progress or lack of progress on the data sheets regularly. So if you are assisting an individual that has this positive behavior support plan, you always want to make sure that you're correctly or accurately documenting. Basic guidelines for improving and modifying support plans. To ensure success, teaching opportunities should happen regularly. Praise and reinforcement. If the plan is working, celebrate with success, no matter how small this improvement may be. Most of the time, the entire plan will not need to be changed. And as a staff member, you should be attending the team meetings to share your experiences with implementing the plan. Remember, if the individuals you support have a history of challenging behavior, this is not a new behavior for them. There should be a positive behavior support treatment plan in place, and a positive behavior support plan may sometimes include a restrictive component. Plans that include restrictions must be reviewed and approved by the Behavior Treatment Committee to ensure that the individual's rights are not violated in any way by the techniques in the PBS plan. Staff must work together as a team to protect others who are in the area and may be in danger of being injured. Crisis intervention. Crisis or emergency situation when an individual can physically injure themselves, others, or cause severe property damage. Causes can be from fear, frustration, physical feelings, or anger, and consumers need staff to support them in coping with the crisis. It can also be caused from what their staff do or don't do. Staff are to act quickly to de-escalate the situation and assist the individual to calm down. Ensure the safety of the individual and others. Attempt to find out what is wrong. Listen carefully and be non-judgmental. This is when you could use confrontation avoidance techniques. How staff approach the individual and their ability to listen respectfully will send a message to the individual that they are there to support them and that we care and are concerned for them. So the do's to diffuse the agitated or anxious individual. Be aware of the warning signs, find out about the person, so that's getting to know them. You want to intervene early, so as soon as you notice that that person's becoming upset, you're going to want to try and figure out what's going on. You want to get them to talk, check for external causes, and use calming techniques. You want to keep yourself controlled, control your anger and your anxiety, provide alternatives, have a plan, know when and how to retreat, take action, follow up, and use other professionals. So you never want to put your hands unexpectedly on them. You never want to challenge, dare, argue, or threaten them. Sound like an overindulgent, angry parent. Never make promises you can't deliver or bribe them. And never leave without a mutual agreement. You also never want to restrain them. Let pride force you into a fight, block a person's attempt to escape, sacrifice yourself for things, move them unless you have to, or stay in a smaller, congested place. Almost done here. So when to call 911? Staff should call 911 or police for assistance when an individual has become so violent and or aggressive that there is serious risk of physical injury to self or others. And staff should call law enforcement when there is a weapon and the individual is threatening to harm themselves or others. You guys are not trained to take that weapon out of their hands away from somebody, so there is great risk at them either injuring themselves or yourself. Decompressing after the person is calm. Take time as soon as possible after the crisis to unwind or decompress. This means relieving pressure or to get things back to normal. You need to take some time to relieve the pressures created by the confrontation. If this is not done, the pressures or negative feelings may get worse until they interfere with your ability to work effectively with that person and or others. Before taking the time to decompress, make sure the confrontation is over. Has the person regained self-control? Has the environment returned to normal? And the safety and well-being of the people living in the home is your first priority. Debriefing occurs when the staff discuss what happened during an incident. Because everyone sees things from a different angle and we want to avoid another incident, this is an important follow-up to the crisis. Debriefing can also help staff decompress by sorting out thoughts and feelings about the incident. And debrief with the person involved in the confrontation, so if appropriate, after he or she has calmed down and reestablished self-control. And then documentation. You're always going to want to document all injuries, unusual behavior, and all actions by staff to calm the individual down. And documentation of agitated and aggressive behavior provides important information. And remember, the DSP must be descriptive, not evaluative when documenting. Write down what you see, not what you think those actions mean. So in summary, make sure you get to know the person. Remember, all behavior is a form of communication. Don't assume the worst about someone. Stay focused on their abilities and strengths, and relationships make all the difference. Help the person to develop that positive identity. Everyone has something to offer, so make sure that you are focusing on all the positives. Talk about the good behaviors as much as possible. Give choices instead of requiring or demanding the person to do something. Emergency intervention techniques. Our staff and our consumer safety are our number one concern. Remove yourself from any immediate danger. So for example, go into another room to give them space, but do not leave the consumer's residence or property. Communicate with the lead staff, guardian, or care coordinator for guidance. If you ever feel like the consumer may injure you or themselves, you're going to call 911 immediately, and never attempt to physically restrain a consumer. All right. So number 15, when a positive behavior support plan is part of a person's plan of service, you are required to do the following. That is E, all of the above. Which of the following statements are true? That is D, both A and C. Rewards have the most impact when they are delivered with enthusiasm. And the more you can reward good behavior, the less the person will want to get your attention by doing a challenging behavior. Number 18, the tone of your voice you use along
What
with
was
your
number? What was number 17?
D, both A and
D,
C.
okay.
Number 18, the tone of your voice the tone of voice you use along with your body language has a big impact on the type of message you are trying to deliver to people. That is true. 19, some of the best ways to support an individual with challenging behaviors are E, all of the above. Give choices, stay focused on the person's strengths and abilities, help the individual to have more fun, and help create a supportive environment for everyone you work with. Number 20, knowing when to use proactive options during your teaching sessions will help you identify personal responses to challenging behavior. That is true. All right, did you guys miss any of those? Perfect. Let me. All right, so do you guys have any questions for me?
We just put it all in the envelope like this, and just mail it just like it is, right?
Correct. So, and make sure that you mail, oops. There's a sign off sheet.
I think I've seen that.
Looks like this.
We just sign our own name and that's it, right?
Yep, so put all the tests in there, sign your name. Again, if you have not gotten your TB test, make sure that you get that as soon as possible. And just remember that once you get it done, you have to go back to get it read. So make sure that you take that into account when you get it done. But if you haven't gotten it done yet, make sure you get it done in the next couple of days so that way you're not late. But if you guys don't have any questions for me, you are free to go. Just make sure you clock out on Well Sky. It was a pleasure meeting all of you, and I hope you enjoy your time here at Christian Home Services. We are excited that you're joining our team. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks
Thank
for
you.
putting up
Have a
with
good day.
my talking all day.
Have a good rest of your day.